Alrighty, everybody out there in Twitch and YouTube land, good morning. It's Captain Abs here with you once again with another episode of A Pilot's Life here on Twitch. I can't believe that I have now flown almost 4 seasons, a good 40 flights live here on Twitch, slowly developing my pilot's career. It's been an entertaining way to experience this. I never planned on using this software in this way, but it's been a really interesting way to kind of share a little bit of insight into the aviation community, into aviation as a career with you guys here via the Twitch stream and the YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate, as always, you guys tuning in and participating in the discussions here on the Twitch stream or via the YouTube comment section afterwards. And we got just a couple more flights to do in this month's schedule, in this rotation here at Air Transat. So for those of you that didn't catch the previous stream, we are parked here at the airport in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, and we are going to be doing a flight back to Montreal. So here is our current flight. For some reason it thinks I'm there, and that's not right. There it is, that's better. From Punta Cana all the way back to Montreal. Sorry that it's a little bit jumpy there. Whenever it seems to recalculate the route and the position, it just seems to jump a little bit there in this map, so it's a little odd. Little disconcerting, but I'm not going to stare at it for too long. But this is our flight for the day. So Punta Cana back to Montreal. It's a fairly direct flight, and it's going to take us about 4 hours to get done. So I do want to get this started before it gets too late. I do have one alert here. If you look here in the corner of the SimBit world, it is now a new month. I got paid on the first day of the month. I got $78. Wow. When you only do 7 hours of flying in a month, though, you're only going to make $78. It was not a very good month last month for flying. Spent a lot of time sort of working with FS Economy and developing some videos in that direction. And did spend a little bit of time working before I got put back onto mandatory isolation thanks to a passenger that exposed me to COVID-19. So I'm sitting at home again for another couple more days until that quarantine period is lifted and I get to go back to work. But in the meantime, gonna make the most of it, gonna spend some time here in the sim. So as you can see here, we've got one last flight back to Punta Cana, and one last turn, I should say. So 3 more flights and this monthly schedule is done. So we're gonna go ahead and hop into the flight deck here in our Air Transat A321, courtesy of Aerosoft, of course, the Aerosoft Professional Edition. And we're going to get started on this flight back to Montreal. As always, working with me here, he is the Andy Richter to my Conan O'Brien, if you will. Say hello to my FS2 crew co-pilot here.
Hi there, Captain. How are you today?
I am good. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get this whole thing started. He's going to get us started here. He's going to turn on the batteries. I believe he just has. He's going to boot up the external power any second now. So there go the batteries. Any second now. FO is going to get that external power turned on. Go ahead and push the button. Doesn't hurt you. It's not going to bite you. Maybe he's not going to do it. There he goes. The second I look away, he did it. And he's going to do some other things to get everything set up. So he's turned on all the screens for us, which is a nice little help. While we're waiting for him to do some things there, we are going to go ahead and do what we need to do, which is pull up our MCDU and already talk about our loading today. So, going to hit up our flight plan here. As always, I've downloaded it onto my tablet because it just makes it very convenient, easy to display to you guys without sort of getting out of the immersion of the sim. And let's skip down to our loading page here. Loading, loading, loading. This seems like exactly what it was last time. 213 passengers. And we'll put in 2.1 kilograms of cargo. Up it a little bit from where it was. And our fuel for today, our block fuel for today, it's a little bit faster on the way back, a little bit less fuel required on the way back because our alternate's a little closer. But we're going to need about 16 and a half. We're going to round that up to 17 tons of fuel. Our fueler will round that up for us. And once we've done that, then of course we can call GSX, trusty GSX. Hey GSX, come and refuel our airplane. And while we did that, of course, the FO was doing some other things. He's going to hopefully turn on those fuel pumps for us. He's pushing buttons. I can hear him pressing buttons. Don't really know what he's doing. Just pushing random buttons around the flight deck. He's throwing everything on pretty much that we need to. So we're going to just start a quick little overhead flow. If I can get this to just look up there. So of course the ADIRSs all have to go on to nav mode. And any white lights basically need to be off in the flight deck. So they're usually the ones that you have to worry about are the fuel pumps. And possibly the crew oxygen supply needs to be turned on as well. And then let's come down here and just check that the external lighting is set correctly. So we should have nav lights on anytime an aircraft is powered. There it goes. And it's assigned to anybody else outside the airplane that the power is on in the airplane. And if the airplane is left unattended, then we should be worried about the batteries dying, especially if the ground power fails. So we're not going to turn on the seatbelts yet. We turn on the no electronic devices. We can't turn on the seatbelts because we're going to do fueling, and that is usually the sign to the cabin crew that we are going to be doing fueling is when we turn on the, or when we have the seatbelt sign off. Once the seatbelt sign goes on, that indicates that any fueling is complete. And it's important for the cabin crew to be aware of this because the cabin crew have to be very close to their emergency exits any time that there's fueling being conducted while there's passengers on board. So most airline flights will often end up with fueling happening while the passengers are boarding or disembarking. And there are a bunch of strict rules. The law technically says that you're not allowed to fuel aircraft with passengers on board. But then it makes a special exception. You are allowed to do fueling with passengers on board, assuming you meet certain criteria. There's a bunch of criteria. The cabin has to be fully staffed with the appropriate cabin crew that have to be near their doors. The external doors have to be open, ready for a quick evaluation if there's a fuel spill. A quick evacuation if there's a fuel spill or anything else happening. No smoking, no flash photography. It still says no flash photography in the regulations. I don't know that anyone's really taking flash photography anymore, but there's a number of different rules that have to be complied with before you can allow passengers fueling on board. So it's important for the cabin crew to be aware that fueling's taking place, and that's what we use the fasten seatbelt sign to symbolize when we're on the ground. We use that to symbolize that yes, there's still fueling happening. Once the fueling is complete, we'll turn on the fasten seatbelt sign. The cabin crew will know the fueling's complete. Alright, anywho, that was a long rant on something that was not terribly relevant to what we're doing here today. So we did get all these overhead switches into the right place, yes. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into the FMS programming. As always, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to pull it up on my... Nope, that did not work as I anticipated. That's what I'm looking for right there. I'm going to pull that up on here. Going to go over to the flight plan here. Mute the track IR, as it were. Suspend the track IR. And go into my FMS. There we go. So there's my AviaWorks FMS that I like to use so much. It just makes it so much... It's a nice input device. It's much more realistically shaped than trying to click on all these buttons with a mouse. And it's also a lot less wear and tear on your arm and your elbow when you're typing in an entire, like, route, you know, across the North Atlantic that may have 30 or 40 or 50 points. It could be a real pain in the butt trying to type it in. So I find that the interface is a lot more natural and a lot less strain on the arm and the elbow when you're using the mouse. Okay, anywho, we're going to get this started here. We're going to go into the flight management guidance computer, and we don't need the software load. What we need to do is initialize our flight. So today's flight, MDPC-CYUL. Now we do have a route loaded in there. I downloaded this off of SimBrief, so if you are a SimBrief user, and I know a lot of you are, it's a fantastic system, and it really helps with... It has downloads available for almost every FMS in any third-party add-on airplane. There's a really nice downloader that sits in your tray, and it can automatically download things for you as you change your flight plans. However, I find it's a little processor intensive. It seems to spend a lot of time and effort monitoring for revised flight plans, so I tend to shut it down. Okay, thank you. So I tend to shut it down when I'm not using it, so I just use it once to download the flight plan and the FMS route. So this is how most airlines would want you to do it anyways. They would want you to load the route in from the ACARS system because it's more reliable. You're less likely to introduce errors. That being said, you're still going to verify. Sorry, the alternate is Ottawa. You're still going... Nope, that's not the right place at all. You're still going to verify that you have... This is the only trouble with the AviaWorks. It's not actual buttons, so sometimes if you're sitting at a bit of an angle, you end up putting things in the wrong place. Our flight number today is Transat 335. There we go, that's a little better. Our cost index today is a lowly 5, and our cruising altitude today is expected to be 33,000 feet. And we'll make sure that the IRS is aligned on this airport. And there we go. Even though I've loaded the flight plan in, good prudence would dictate, and almost every airline procedure also dictates, that we verify the flight plan against the flight plan in the FMS against the flight plan that has been filed to make sure that there were no errors introduced in the data transmission phase. The one thing about the ACAR system is there's not a very rugged error checking method within the ACAR system itself. There can be errors and corruptions in the message caused by interference, airborne, or errors in the computer, and there's not really a very good error checking algorithm built into it. So it's very important that you manually, if you do load anything directly out of an ACAR system, you manually verify the points. It's a lot less effort than typing them all in, though, just to go through them and make sure they all exist. So Papa November Alpha, Acevo, and then we do L453. So you can see here it says L453 just above, just between the waypoints here, so that's indicating that we are on the correct airway. L453 all the way to Sorta, L453, there it is, to Sorta. Then we go direct to Luckty, and then we do an L454 to Berg. So there's L454 until we get to a waypoint called Berg, somewhere here. Wow, there's a lot of waypoints on this. There it is, Berg. Then from Berg we go direct to Reist, direct to Bridgeport, direct to Cambridge, direct to Peaburg, and that's it. One thing about if you do ACAR's arrivals and departures, or ACAR's flight plans, is it will not load any arrivals or departures for you. The departures and the arrivals are not part of the flight plan itself. It will start at whatever point is at the end of your flight plan. So I'm just going to have a quick look here. Okay, so let's do, if I can get the keyboard to come up here, thank you, MDPC. I just want to see if there is a, I don't even know what runway we're departing at this point in time, but I think PNA is right overhead the field. I feel like it's a Punta Cana VOR or something like that. Let's just check and see if it's on this VOR DME. Yes, PNA. So we're not actually going to really... What's the next point after PNA? It was Acevo. Is Acevo on any of the stars here? No, it's not. Okay, so we're not going to fly a star, we're just going to depart and turn on course. Before we go any further, let's just do a quick little weather check here in my vPilot window. Verify that the weather is 30 degrees. It's going to be a shame to leave this because it's cool up in Canada again. But we're looking at the winds again out of the east, yeah. So we're going to depart runway 09. But we're just going to depart straight out. We're not going to do one of the SIDs. So it's not kind of in the plan. It's fine. So we'll go to MDPC departure, and we're going to go departure off of runway 09, but we're not going to do any of these departures. So it's just going to give me 09. We're going to climb until we get to 1547, and then we're going to be direct to our first fix. In actuality, I'll take off in heading mode, and we'll probably turn towards Acevo because I don't want to turn back overhead the field. There's no point in that. We'll go direct to our second waypoint, most likely. If we had ATC, we would deal with whatever ATC wanted to tell us. Arrivals into Montreal. I can also do a quick weather check on vPilot and Montreal. And the winds are out of the north, which slightly favors the 6s. I'm going to assume 6 left is still the arrival runway. Carter 3, Peaburg transition. And we can insert that. And now our flight plan is complete. We've got our departure process off of 09 and MDPC. And then we keep going all the way down to the bottom. We've already checked all the waypoints. Oop. We can go this way, I guess, too. And so we should have, yes, we see Carter 3 arrival. So after Peaburg, it lists Carter 3 arrival.
I'm back from the walk
and all the way around to the ILS. So it looks like everything is in there. Thank you. One thing I should probably do before I forget, let me just call for catering. Fueling should be happening right now because I saw it said fueling truck is parked in position. So we've done the flight plan. And we're going to go back to the second page of the initialization here. We just need to go again to the loading page here and just retrieve our actual weight from the aircraft, from the loading screen here that Aerosoft provides. And our block fuel, we're expecting to load 17. Looks like we're up to about 11.5 tons right now, so we're doing pretty good. Last but not least, we go to the performance page, select your flap setting. It's a pretty long runway. We'll do a flap 1 departure, and that'll give you all your speeds for your flap 1 departure, 50, 51, and 55. And the trim setting as well. Alright, and we're just about ready to get going here. That's what I was waiting for.
The agents want to start sending people out. Can we start boarding?
Yes.
Okay, I'll let them know.
So I use that as a prompt, and I try to start the GSX boarding at that point in time as well, so they sort of work together. The FS2 crew and the GSX. Alright, so that's it. So we're done with that. We're done with the FMC programming, so we can go ahead and get rid of that FMC. Goodbye. I don't need you either. Close. Thank you. And we can just resume setting up the flight deck here. Now, because we're not doing a published SID, I don't really have a top altitude. ATC could assign one. I don't know if they're going to. Well, if they don't exist, they're not going to, so 33,000. Go back to my VPilot for 1 second. The altimeter setting in DPC, yeah, it's standard 1013. It works perfect. 1013, 1013. That's all good. We will need max braking if we do a reject. I am going to get up the VATSIM Unicom frequency for now. I didn't see any ATC online for the time being. A couple of aircraft flying around the Caribbean, but no ATC online right now. We'll hope for some later for our arrival at Montreal at least.
Take your food, please. Thank you.
Alright. And that's about it, I believe. We got everything all set up here, so... Are you ready for the departure briefing? Are you ready for the takeoff briefing?
Ready?
Whatever you want to call it. I don't know why the tug is parked under the tree there. Okay, back to... the charts. There's not really too much to talk about in the charts, really. The emergencies we'll say are as previously briefed because they did a pretty thorough briefing on the flight down here. The charts here, so the emergency turn off runway 09, we're just going to say it's going to be runway heading because it's just ocean out there. And as an MSA, 3,000 feet, and we'll, if we have any kind of emergency, we'll get a vector and come back here. Taxi out, we're parked at gate 7 here in Punta Cana. There's my aircraft. So we're going to taxi for departure runway 09. It's going to be a pretty quick taxi out. Push back. We're probably going to exit the apron here on the west end here. Go out Delta Echo and just hold short of 09. Departure, there is no published SID, so we're just going to fly runway heading initially. Actually 097, so I should get that. So because we don't have a published RNAV SID to fly, we're going to fly it in manual heading mode here. So 097. And the top altitude we're going to use for now is going to be our cruise altitude because I got nothing else to worry about out there right now. No other ATC, no other aircraft that I'm aware of. I'll keep an eye on my VATSPI. Didn't seem to want to work today. It seems to be having trouble downloading the server list off of VATSIM. So I'll be using something else to do it, maybe SimAware. Oh, there is actually a San Juan Center now, Don, just adjacent to us. Not doesn't directly cover us, but they might cover us on departure. So we'll talk to them anyways on the way out and see if they want to identify us and talk to us as we fly through, I think, a small sliver of their space. Yeah. So that's it for the charts. There were not too many charts today. Terrain is 3,000 feet was the MSA all around Punta Cana, safe altitude for 25 miles. The weather is beautiful here. Destination is, I checked the forecast in the flight plan, and it's going to be okay. Chance of some showers, but nothing terribly untowards, and no major en route weather that I could see. Operational, nothing's broken on the airplane. No TAMs in Punta Cana. Let's just double check and make sure. This should not be the first time you're checking the NOTAMs when you're doing the departure briefing. However, the way I do the streams, I try to get things going a little faster because there's a lot of time to talk in cruise. Men and equipment working west of taxiway Echo. Caution is advised. All run and Approach lighting system, runway 826 is unserviceable due to maintenance. That's okay because we're not going to be doing an approach at night. That's it for operational. We're going to be above max landing weight, so we may have to burn some fuel if we want to return if it's not in a total emergency. And noise abatement is non-existent.
May I take your code, please?
That's all I got. Any questions?
Okay, that's checked and no questions.
Perfect, thank you. Alright, let's fire the APU. Track air's going a little nutty there. I didn't think my head was that high up.
Checked.
Mute you. Alright, so we're starting the APU. We're going to start getting ready to push back here. Oh, I didn't actually check to make sure we were done fueling, which is my bad. I absolutely should make sure that fuel is done. Which it is, 17 tons. So fuel is done. Guy comes up and gives you the receipt. Put the seatbelt sign on. Now the cabin crew knows that fueling is done, and they can do other duties away from the cabin doors. And that's it. We are just about ready to go here. Just waiting for the last of the people to get on board. I do like the look of this airport. I think they did a nice job capturing the thatched roofs of the airport buildings there. I really kind of like that. The grass is a little bit sparse, unfortunately. But given the technology available in P3D, it's not bad. Now that I've been flying FltSim 2020, I feel like I am spoiled by it, and I think a lot of you are spoiled by it. You've seen what you can do with this kind of scenery, with an airport like this. And the things that developers are going to be able to do, the amount of detail they're going to be able to cram in there that still works quite well. I'm really quite shocked at how well this sim works, despite the level of detail available. Alright, 163 out of 213 boarded, so we still got a few more to go. And did we get a bus to show up? I don't think we got a bus to show up ever. Here comes the baggage. Oh, they haven't even started loading the baggage yet. Here comes the baggage now. Oh, jeez Louise. It's going to be a while. I would have thought they would have shown up with a bus. I mean, in reality here in Punta Cana, you just sort of get off the airplane and walk over towards the terminal there. But GSX always likes to bring a bus to any hard stand. I'm surprised it took these guys that long to get here. That's going to be a couple more minutes to finish loading this stuff, isn't it? I do have to say that I think GSX has done some of the nicest modeling in the P3D world. As simple as it is, the detail level on their ground crews is quite phenomenal. I think a lot of that wrinkles and stuff on the jackets and the clothes is just texturing, but the overall impression is extremely good. The scratches on the equipment, but the shape of the equipment, like they've got the shape of the plugs for the tow bar connection correct. You know, a lot of it is just texturing, but the overall impact is really quite something. And the fact that a lot of these people move, that they've got bodies that move quite well. You know, hats off to FS Dream Team. GSX is some of the nicest modeling in the P3D world. And even I've always loved this, the way the guy takes the bags and throws them on the belt. You see a little jolt there where he actually grabs it, and let's go take a better view here. Let's see, baggage loader front, loading area. There you go. So you'll see him reach in there, you see him grab a suitcase. You can see the transition where it goes from being an object that's part of the cart to an object in his hands to an object on the belt, but if you're not sitting here like watching like intently like this, it is amazing how fluid overall the animation is. And the impact, you know, it can have just on the immersion level, on the reality of it all. It's really quite amazing how well GSX has done, and they've, like so many developers, they're constantly improving their products. They're constantly redoing the models, improving the models, adding more detail. You know, I mean, you look, there's the grill here on the side, and the safety stickers everywhere on this, you know, baggage loader. Look closely, you'll even see inside the, you don't actually see the light lit up, but inside the beacon there, you can see it trying to rotate.
Hi, Captain. The passenger boarding is complete, and I've got the load sheet here for you when you're ready.
Thank you.
Have a safe flight.
The walking was a little bit awkward there. A little bit, but I mean, I'm really kind of nitpicking when it comes down to the way all of this has been integrated and worked together. And of course, it's going to drive through some solid objects here, but that's okay. You know, you can't expect perfection. These objects are obviously all unrelated. These vehicles are part of the airport, not the GSX. But the way that the detail with which it's all linked together, it's really quite phenomenal sometimes. And it just makes it quite entertaining to just watch the loading process. It also gives you more of the impression that you're actually doing something productive. Alright, while we're letting him load, let's just do one useful thing here. So, assuming the APU is running successfully, it is. Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
Please disconnect external power.
Roger, disconnecting the GPU.
What other ones do we have here? So, of course, I get a little weird bit of clipping there of the rudder and everything, so I don't like that view so much. Let's try it from the right side. Can't get clipping in the airplane. I'm just never happy, am I?
Captain, the GPU is now.
Can't see anything on that side. So the only worthwhile view really was this view from behind here. And that's okay. Then we sit and we wait, and that again is also part of the aviation industry. There's a big motto in the aviation industry, and that is hurry up and wait. Everyone wants you to go and do your job as quickly as possible and get there really quickly. And then, of course, you get your job done, and then you end up waiting. See, I never even noticed the animation there, the sides of the baggage belt, the baggage loader there, going in and out. So you just watch before it lifts. It'll rotate, but before it lifts, these safety rails will raise again, I think. I would hope. Yeah, see here's the safety rails raising up again, so it can't slide off accidentally as it's going up in the air, and then it goes up. Like, a long time was spent studying these vehicles to make these reproductions pretty accurate here. Alright, but it's loading the last of these on there, so we should probably be getting just about ready to go here. Just gonna see these last of these doors close and we can do our before start checklist. And while we're at it, we can call for the pushback because any second now we're gonna need it.
Ground and cockpit.
Go ahead.
Alright, Captain, we're removing the jetway now.
Thank you. Before start checklist down to the line.
Before start checklist, down to the line. Cockpit prep.
Complete.
Completed. Gears, pins, and covers.
Removed.
Signs.
On.
ADIRS.
Nav.
Fuel quantity.
17 tons.
Takeoff data.
Set.
Hello, Captain.
Baro ref.
Pushback.
1013 set.
1013. Cross-checked. Set. Okay, before start checklist completed to the line.
Check.
All right, guys. Everyone seated. We're all buttoned up and ready to go in the back.
Thank you.
If you need anything, just let me know.
Before start procedures.
Okay.
While he's doing his thing here, I'm going to really quickly just verify I'm on the current flight page. Yep, looks good.
Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted. Release parking brakes.
Stand by. Before start checklist below the line. Before start checklist below the line.
Before start checklist below the line. Windows and doors.
Closed.
Closed. Beacon.
On.
Thrust levers.
Idle.
Parking brake.
Set.
Before start checklist complete.
Release parking brakes. All engines clear. Start at will.
Alright. And away we go. Starting engine 1. Ah, what do I always forget in this stinking airplane? Maybe you bleed. She ain't gonna start without it, that's for sure. Did I not select the aircraft? That's why I won't know to start. There we go. At least it makes sure to tell you if that doesn't work. Alright, so normal start on 1, starting engine 2.
Set parking brakes.
Waiting your confirmation for good engine start.
Well, you got 2 good starts. You guys are clear to disconnect. Cockpit to ground. Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
You're clear to disconnect and go to hand signals.
Alright, you'll have a safe flight.
Alright, he's just doing his thing. Just gonna have one more look here.
Unlocking gear. Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed.
There we go. Now I got my VATSIM to work finally. Don't know why it took so long, but it did. Alright.
Left is clear. Right is clear.
Alright. Buddy is, where's Buddy? There's Buddy. You good to go, Buddy? Alright. After start checklist. After start procedures.
Check. flaps 1 plus F.
After start checklist.
Okay, after start checklist. Anti-ice.
Off.
ECAM status.
Checked.
Pitch trim. Rudder trim.
One upset. 0.
After start checklist complete.
Flight control check.
Ready?
Elevators.
Full up. Full down. Neutral. Full
Ailerons.
left. Full right. Neutral.
Rudder.
Full left. Full right. Neutral.
Clear on the left.
Clear on the right.
Punta Cana traffic. Good morning. Transat 335 is on the apron, taxiing for departure runway 09er. Alright, unfortunately we have to leave the warm tropical hinterlands behind us and up into Canada, where fall is definitely locking in quickly, with some cool, not cold yet, but definitely cool or rainy weather. It's going to be cold soon enough, though. And taxi light on, please. Oh, that's right. You don't do anything because you're an idiot. You should be able to turn the taxi light on. I imagine that's an SDK fault more than anything. But it really is annoying. Because light control should be the FO's duty, or whoever's not taxiing anyways, the pilot monitoring duty. Most flight decks, there's usually a delineation of duties based on who's flying and who is the pilot monitoring. And the pilot flying will usually be responsible for the guidance panel, the thrust levers, the flight controls themselves. And the pilot monitoring will be responsible for all of the overhead panel systems. So lights.
Captain, the captain is secure.
Thank you. So the lights should be the FO's domain. Little St. Elmo's fire there. I'll have to see it when you're sitting on the ground. Usually you need the friction from actually moving. Before takeoff checklist down to the line. Before takeoff checklist to the line.
Before takeoff checklist down to the line. Flight controls.
Checked.
Checked. Flight instruments.
Checked.
Checked. Briefing.
Confirmed.
Flap setting.
Config 1 plus F.
Config 1 plus F. V1, VR, V2 flex temp.
V1 150, VR 151, V2 155. Flex temp is 33 degrees. Flex temp is 33 degrees.
V1 is 150. V rotate is 151. V2 is 155. And for the flex temp we have 3 degrees. ATC.
Set.
ECAM memo.
You stop pressing the stupid button. It really bugs me. Takeoff, no blue.
Before takeoff checklist complete to the line.
Alright. Just going to pull up the line here, let's straighten out for a second, and have one quick glance over at the VATSIM window, just to confirm that there's nobody else approaching here, and then we're going to look outside and also confirm. Punta Cana traffic at Transat 335 is taking position runway 09 for departure, left turn out northbound. Cabin crew seats for departure. Before start checklist below the line. Before takeoff checklist below the line.
Before takeoff checklist, below the line. Cabin crew,
Advised.
TCAS,
TARA.
engine mode selector,
Norm.
PAX.
On.
Okay, before takeoff checklist is complete.
Alright, since he's not going to do it, I'm going to get the lights. Alright, one last check. Yeah, this is running, right? Because I don't want to do this whole flight without it running. Alright. I think we're good to go here. Just adjust my seat so I'm a little more comfortable. Stable. Takeoff.
Check. Thrust set.
We spawned over there.
Checked. 100 knots.
Checked.
V1. Rotate. Positive rate.
Gear up.
Gear up. Gear up.
Here's heading.
Checked.
This should be a managed climb. Can I do managed climb? I can't do managed climb. Flaps up.
Flap 0.
Autopilot on. Autopilot 1 on.
Autopilot 1 on.
Alright. Coming up to the MSA quickly now and just accelerating. I'm going to go into my FMC really quickly here. And we're going to go direct to Placebo.
Track 2 set.
Nav.
Checked.
Climb.
Checked.
After takeoff checklist.
After takeoff checklist, down the line. Landing gear.
Up.
Flaps.
Retracted.
PAX.
On.
After takeoff checklist completed, to the line.
Check. And there we go in the left turnout to our first waypoint there, Placebo. And a farewell again to the Dominican Republic. Probably not going to come back again anytime soon, because we're going to try and do, if we do another month here at Air Transat, we're going to try and do some different destinations. Alright, and let's see here. Oh, and now, by the time I get airborne, the San Juan Center is closed again. He was online for an hour or so there. You got a couple departures out there, I guess. And that was it. Back to no ATC again. Well, we'll see what happens. I was optimistic we were going to talk to somebody early in the flight, but I guess not today. I guess it's just not our day to be talking to people. That's okay. Alright, getting the climb going though. On our way back, let's have a little look-see here. So we got a SIVO. If I zoom all the way out to the 320 range just to sort of see. So we're going to hit a SIVO and then we're going to make a big turn to the north. Not going to see too much in the way of winds initially here. I was looking at the wind forecast here in the flight plan. Really shouldn't be heads down too much below 10,000, but anyways, we're just going to go quickly to the maps. And if I go through to the wind forecast, what you're going to see is that down here in the Caribbean, the winds are very, very light. However, as we head north, across about halfway through our flight, and especially as we get over the northeast U.S., kind of see a strong quartering tailwind pickup there. That'll be nice. It'll help rush us to our destination a little bit quicker, and I'm probably going to bump up the cost index on this one. It was only 5, and I don't really like that cost index of 5. So the cost index, for those of you that don't know, is basically it's a relative way of telling the airplane how much you're willing to kind of spend on a flight. The higher the cost index, the faster the plane will go, and the more money, more fuel, which generally means more money, it'll cost you to get to a destination. So an airline will sort of determine their baseline cost index, and they'll sort of strive for a certain number all the time that sort of balances reasonable time en route with a reasonable fuel burn for the flight. A lot of airlines kind of work in the range of 25. Some airlines tend to vary it back and forth to make it easier for them to hit their target. So if they have a target time and target arrival time, they're always trying to hit, you know, like this flight is scheduled for 4 hours and 20 minutes, and if you've got more wind, then they may bump up the cost index or bump it down. But cost index is supposed to take that wind into account, but it still doesn't take it into account fully. So we're through 10,000s. He's got everything turned off. Leave the belts on for just a little bit longer. Cost index takes into account the wind. So if you have winds programmed into your FMS, or even based on the actual winds you're experiencing right now, the cost index will decide to go faster or slower based on the wind to sort of create that optimal profile of balance of cost versus speed. But some airlines will vary the cost index to try and ensure the airplane arrives as close to on time as possible. Not early because the gate may not be available, but not too late because obviously you don't want to set repercussions for the airplane and the passengers and the crew being late for future flights that they're going to do down the road. So some airlines will vary it, and so SimBrief varies it. The SimBrief has a estimated standard en route time that they have calculated for city pairs, and then they will try to then it will pick a cost index to match that. Now, me, on the other hand, being the sim pilot, fuel costs nothing to me. If fuel costs money to me, I would fly the cost index in the flight plan. However, since fuel costs nothing, and I can shave a little bit of time off my arrival. So right now, we're showing arrival in Montreal at 1814 Zulu with 3.4 in the tanks. If I go back to the cost index page and bump this up to a more standard 25, give it a couple seconds to come up with a new calculation. 1811, 3.0 in the tank, so it's going to burn another 500 kilos. It's going to get there about 4 or 5 minutes sooner. In the grand scheme of things, 4 or 5 minutes sooner usually doesn't make too much of a difference in the airline, but the longer the flight, the more of a difference this could make. And if the air flight's already behind schedule, maybe that 4 or 5 minutes would just be nice to just sort of get a little bit closer to being on time. You're not going to be on time, but you'd be a little bit closer. The next flight will have just that much more of a fighting chance of being on time. You'll notice also that it did increase the speed. I don't know what the speed was at before, but we noticed we stopped our climb there for a second and increased our speed. So higher cost index, faster speed, more fuel burn. Get there faster, but at the cost of burning more fuel to get there. We'll climb at a higher speed, which means we'll be at low altitudes burning more fuel for longer. And because we're moving at a higher speed, we'll get more drag. This is one of the funny things about the aviation industry, is that in commercial aviation, in airline operations, speed is usually one of the least important factors when it comes to operating. what is much more important is the cost of the flight and saving gas. So it's funny that a generation ago, or 2 generations ago, when airline travel was just entering its golden age, you know, at the start of the dawn of the jet age, manufacturers couldn't build jets to go fast enough, and the airlines couldn't buy jets as fast as they wanted. They wanted to get there fast, because before deregulation, everyone paid the same price for a ticket, regardless. The prices were set. So the only way you could convince someone to fly with your airline versus another airline is by providing better service or faster service. So at the dawn of the jet age, it was all about the speed. Who can get there the fastest? And so the airplanes just started getting faster and faster, and getting closer and closer to Mach 1. And obviously the Concorde was the final sort of pinnacle of that general attitude. However, after deregulation, when having a reasonable bottom line became the most important thing in the aviation industry, trying not to lose money on every flight, all of a sudden speed was no longer important. And in the last 50 years, the speed, there's transition pretty much, even though it is already at standard. After takeoff checklist below the line.
After takeoff checklist below the line. Aero ref.
Standard set.
Standard set. After takeoff checklist is complete.
Check. So in the age of deregulation, when the bottom line and saving money became the most important, speed was no longer an important factor. Neither was service, for that matter. As long as you just got the passengers to their destination and got the most money out of their pockets, that was what really determined whether your airline was profitable. It wasn't how good your service was. It was how much you can charge and how little you can spend to actually get people from point A to point B. And as a result, the speed of airline travel has not increased in 50 years, and has basically decreased over the last 50 years, as instead of flying all the airplanes, at the red line at max speed as much as possible at cruise, airliners have settled into a much more comfortable regime, 20% below max speed, where they can definitely make a lot more money. That being said, this is a sim world. If I was flying for a real airline, I would of course fly the cost index they have, but I'm going to bump this cost index up even higher here. See how much faster we can get back there. So going 75 on the cost index burns another 400 kilos of fuel, gets us there at 18:02. So I've now saved about almost 15 minutes off the end time on this flight. Let's also just have one quick look here at fuel for our alternate. We need 2,600 kilos to get to our alternate today, and we have now got that. So I couldn't bring the cost index any higher because it'll probably drop the fuel even lower. The other thing I need to do in this case, if I really want to be flying these cost indexes carefully, is to make sure that I have an accurate wind forecast for the whole route. And this is something that in a lot of modern airliners now you can download it. PMDG has managed to integrate that, where you can download the whole wind uplink really quickly. You press a couple buttons, the computer downloads it all from your, from your company's central flight planning computer, and instantly has access to all the winds and can make a very realistic approximation. If you don't input the winds, then most of the airplanes are going to do one of two things. They're going to, if you can put in even just one wind, so I believe on the init page here we have the capability of putting in a wind. Maybe not even just, but certainly on a lot of the Boeing FMSs you can put in just one generic wind, an average wind for the whole flight. And that'll work for the initial calculation, but the trouble with that is that once you get airborne, the airplane will combine your predicted wind with the actual wind it's feeling right now to come up with a realistic wind plan for the whole flight. So once you've started to experience some of the flight and you've passed some of the flight, the average wind is no longer terribly valid. So it's much more important, if you really want an accurate prediction, to get some actual wind data in there. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to go and we're going to get this wind in there. So the wind is always going to be here, and your flight plan and your nav log is going to tell you what the wind is. So I think what we'll do is we'll do it this way. We'll do this. Pause the track IR for a second, and we'll bring up this, and that'll be a little bit easier to put in. So the first waypoint where we're going to be at cruise is going to be Rabble. So what this is 039 at 39. I wonder if you could just put 39 at 39. And it needs an altitude to start with, which we're going to be in cruise. We're going to be at 330. So you put that in there. And then you can literally go to the next flight, the next leg. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to do... Nope. Previous phase. There we go. So Cebus. So you can go through this whole flight plan. If the wind has not changed too much, you can see it's copied over. So if the wind doesn't change too much from one leg to the next, it's not really worth putting in. But this is a pretty big change, 020 at 13. Anything more than about a 10 knot or a 20 degree change is probably worth putting in. So 020 at 13. Keep on doing that. Grumman, 334 at 7. So the winds are kind of, they're very light and variable down here over the Caribbean right now. As we head north, they're going to become a little bit more steady. 241 at 20. So it's swinging almost all the way around behind us. It'll be a tailwind by the time we get to Savon here. 241 at 20. And 231 at 32. Now, depending on how many waypoints you have and the distance between them, it may or may not be necessary to do all of them. Perdo, 220 at 46 by go. See, it's jumping in pretty big bounds here, easily 10 to 20 knots each waypoint. 217 at 73, like that's going to be very different than 46. So we're definitely, that's going to be a huge tailwind. This is probably going to push us to Montreal quite a bit faster. 217 at 73. Now there's not much change here at Okonu, 216 at 78. So I'm not going to bother putting in that one. Then we go into the next page, web. 217 at 98. Okay, that's a pretty big speed increase there. So we'll go ahead and put that one in. Berg, 218 at 104. So we're going to get 100 knots behind us as we're not quite totally behind us. It's going to be a bit of a quartering tailwind, but it'll definitely be adding to our ground speed. Rice, 220 at 12. That's 112. We'll put this one in, and then we'll skip the next one, which is 220 at 113. 112, 113, 219 at 116, 217 at 118, 204 at 73. Okay, so Cambridge, that's it. So I'll put one more in Cambridge at our last one, just to have sort of one last fix, but... And then we could put in a descent forecast if we want. Yeah, we'll put it in there. Because we're going to have such a strong tailwind on the descent, this will affect our descent angle if it's trying to come up with the optimal descent. So we'll put in that one as well. You could put in the different waypoints here, but that's not going to be very accurate. The best way to do the descent forecast is to go down here to your wind information table, and it's going to have one for basically the whole descent. So 210 at 122 at 350, and you can put in a whole series of different altitudes, and as it descends, it's going to make a calculation. 207 at 117 at 310. 207 at 117 at 310. 209 at 49 at 200. 209 at 49 at 200. 208 at 18 at 150. 208. Oops. 208 at 18 at 15,000. And we can even put in the last one. 221 at 12 at 10,000. And now it's going to have a pretty realistic calculation of what it's going to get, of the wind it's going to experience, and it's going to provide us with a pretty accurate descent here. So at the end of the day, let's go back to the flight plan page and see what this did. This actually added some time. 1804, nope, now I hadn't let it finish the recalculation. It takes the FMS a little while to do these recalculations. 1755, 57. So we're now talking about taking off. We've now taken off almost 20 minutes from the flight, mostly by increasing the cost index, but also by putting in some accurate wind. So because we're going to get a strong tailwind later on, we're going to burn less fuel than it thinks based on the current wind right now. You can see we also got fuel back in the tanks. 3.0, I could bump that cost index up even higher. $99. Depending on the version of your FMS there, say it's another 2 minutes, 100 kilograms of fuel, but more burned. We're burning a lot more fuel than we have to, but, well, that's no... We'll let the airline CEOs deal with that one. But yeah, most of the cost indexes, depending on... the cost index value range depends upon your FMS and aircraft type. Some have a 4-digit cost index, some have a 3-digit cost index, or sorry, I should say, some have a 2-digit cost index, some have a 3-digit cost index. So on the Airbuses, the maximum cost index value you can have is 99, so it goes from 0 to 99. On the Boeings, I believe it goes from 0 to 999. But once you get much above 100, it's a logarithmic scale. It's not linear, it's logarithmic, so the bigger the numbers get, the less impact each number makes. You get more of a jump from 0 to 10 than you get from 90 to 100. 90 to 100 is almost no difference, but 0 to 10 is a huge jump. And as you get into those higher numbers, big changes make very little difference at the end of the day because you're going just a tiny bit faster. And you're burning more fuel, but it's not making much of a difference to the bottom line. But we're getting there. Alright. And at this high cost index, it's going to take us a while to get to our top of climb here. We are going to be at this for... I don't even see the top of climb on here. That's going to keep me right. 330 top of climb must be on here somewhere. Again, you can bring up the FMS and ask it what altitude you're going to be at various points. Justin 299. Yeah, see, at the current rate of speed... What did I do for a... We are not going to get to 330 until after Rabble. At 15:26, so almost 1 hour from now, because we're climbing at such a high speed and we're very heavy, so we're climbing at a very slow rate. It's going to take us an hour to get to cruise at this rate. So I may mess with this a little bit here. Carve this Mach number back just a wee bit, just to get us a little bit of a boost, because otherwise we will never get to cruise altitude at this rate. One other thing I'm going to do here is turn the seatbelts off now that we're above the clouds, although it is a little bit choppy out here. Feels a little bit choppy, but nothing terrible. But because it was traveling at such a high speed and we're so heavy, it was going to take us another hour to reach our cruise altitude of 33,000 feet. Okay, fine. I guess I could use a cup of coffee. Who couldn't use a cup of coffee in the morning, right?
I have some drink for you, Captain. Here you are.
Oh, you're very nice. It's a silly little Easter egg, but I enjoy it. Because what is flying without a cup of coffee in your hands, really? There goes the Dominican behind us. Nothing but open ocean ahead of us for the next 2 hours. And see that little dialing back that Mach number, it got us a little boost to climb rate there, but it really still did not help much. Top of climb, still 15:27. Get a little bit more. We have lots of sort of margin to play with here. You can cheat a little bit and get it up to cruise a little bit higher, a little bit faster, but it's not necessarily the most optimal way to get there. Because you're giving up the speed to gain altitude. And unfortunately, it's still not sustainable because once you've given up the speed, it again settles down to this fairly low climb rate. If you really need to expedite your climb for ATC, for traffic or something, you can always do this and give up a little bit of speed for climb rate. But I'm surprised this still has not even cycled now into our top of climb being visible on our 320-mile range here. Even though we still got 3,000 feet left to go. If I was to switch it back into managed mode, it would have to accelerate so much it would level off for about 3 or 4 minutes before it would catch up. So if Flying currents, it's just a little bit more. $2,000 feet to go. Pitch it up just a little bit more to get to that cruise, just a little bit faster. It's a little bit of cheating, but if you want to be at cruise quickly for one reason or another, you can do it. Just be aware of where your green dot is. That green dot is kind of your minimum maneuvering speed. You don't want the airplane to get any slower than that.
$1,000 to go.
Checked. So this is about as slow as we want to let this plane get right now. That climb rate's going to kind of decay a little bit there. No, I may have done it too soon. Trying to time it so that I can pass it into management mode just in time for Alt Star here. And it's not going to bring the engines back to idle, it's just going to now accelerate this last little bit here. And let's see how long it takes to get back to that cruise Mach number of, I think it was at 8.3 or something like that. It's going to take a couple of minutes to get back to 8.3 here. But there we go. A little expedite the climb and just get it done. You can kind of see, I believe that's Bermuda over there. You just sort of make out just the faint shallow waters there. I believe it's Bermuda. Let's just check, see. Get my SDKP here. Go to my live map. Give it a second to think about where we are here. Yeah. Oh, no, it's not actually, no, we're definitely not far and close enough to be the Bahamas. No, that's the Turks and Caicos, most likely, over there. Got one guy coming at us at 37,000. We don't need to worry too much about him. There was one guy there, land 592. I don't know if you noticed that just before we took off. As we were rolling down the runway, I noticed he had just spawned somewhere on the ramp near us. Alright, there we are. And there's our route for the day. As you can see, not too much weather along our route. Of course, there's not much radar offshore here, but a little bit of showery activity when you get up into Canada, but not too much today. A little bit of stuff happening over Florida. We're going to just ignore that. Alright, we're going to put it back onto the current flight page here. So, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, if you guys have been using Sim Toolkit Pro, but it is still steadily evolving. They're up to version 6.41, and I think like 3 or 4 weeks ago when I last really kind of did a big analysis of it, they were at like 6.11. So constantly, every week, putting out new versions with new things. You know, here's your current status of your airplane, your precise latitude and longitude. Damn if that isn't like precise down to the millimeter there. Ground speed, fuel on board, and everything picking up. 462, our ground speed slowly accelerating. We're almost back to cruise speed there. Tools and data, I have not really played with these too much. You can explore the various networks, FS Cloud, VATSIM, see who's on. It's a fully interactive map. A lot of user interface improvements. There's a few things that still have been bugging me. One that's been bugging me is that the fleet page is not updating properly. The current location of your aircraft is not updating properly. It's stuck where it was a while ago, and I don't know why it hasn't been sort of a priority for them to sort of improve that. They have done a bunch of other improvements to this page, but one thing they haven't done is make sure that this represents actually the last flight that airplane flew. But of course, I can go to the logbook and see what you've done. Those of you that I think I talked about this in my last stream, my FS Economy project of ferrying an airplane from Vietnam back to North America is coming along pretty slowly, but it's coming. It's getting there. You can see I've pretty much flown up the whole chain of the Aleutian Islands here. I've made it as far as Anchorage, Alaska. Last leg here was down into Anchorage. So pretty much we're into mainland North America at this point. Now it's about 1,000 or so miles 1,200 miles. I'm heading for Saskatchewan, actually. So just sort of 1,200 miles. The thing that was nice about this section was that it was very easy to find missions that sort of jive with what you were doing, because you were flying one very linear direction. So you could very easily in FS Economy pick out the missions you want to do. Now that you're getting into an area where there's a huge number of airports, there's a huge number of possibilities and permutations to get you down to your destination. It's a lot harder to sort of find the most profitable routes. But I'm sure I'll find some profitable routes anyways as I do a couple more hops in here. The trouble has been, too, that it's been very difficult. One thing that's kind of really neat about FltSim 2020 is that it does have a built-in icing simulation, and it is, I don't know if it's necessarily accurate, but it does make you work anyways. It simulates several of the impacts of icing on the aircraft. It simulates the fact that you lose forward visibility is the most obvious one, so you actually get ice build up on your windows and you're unable to see outside unless you can turn on a windshield heat or something like that. It also appears to increase drag and reduce available engine power. So you end up, if you're stuck in it for any length of time, and especially if you don't turn on your ice protection systems, you start to really quickly lose engine power and lose speed. And it has a very noticeable impact. If you stay in it for too long, you can actually stall the airplane just from losing engine power and not being able to maintain speed and altitude. So it's a neat simulation. It's a bit tough because I've been flying in the Cessna Caravan. You're kind of doomed to low and slow flying. You can't get up over the clouds. Usually you're stuck in them, and it's been a real bout of cloudy weather along the Aleutian Islands while I've been flying this whole thing here. So it's been a very challenging, some very challenging weather trying to fly up this island chain. Lots of fun though. Lots of fun. I have also noticed a few quirks in the Cessna Caravan, things, bugs that I've notified Microsoft about because some of them are fairly obvious. One is that one of the de-icing switches is backwards. Now that I've been using it a lot, it does the opposite of what it's supposed to based on the switch labeling, so you have to actually move it to the wrong position in order for it to work correctly. The other thing I noticed is that the wind vector is backwards. So on the MFD and the Caravan, on the G1000 system, there is a wind vector, but it's backwards from what's actually being experienced. I've looked at the wind socks, I've flown the airplane, and based on the actual speeds you're experiencing, the wind vector is being drawn exactly the reciprocal of what it should be. And it bugs me a lot that there are still these glitches in FltSim 2020. These are things that, this is what your beta testing is for, and even your alpha testing. What were you guys doing during the beta testing and the alpha testing? Like, nobody noticed these things, nobody bothered to fix them, like, and some of these are like incredibly simple things that are just like simply something, a negative sign should be positive, or vice versa. Like, these should be, you know, flip it 180 degrees. It's a very simple fix, and yet even some of these things were not fixed in the beta testing phase, because the beta testing phase was so short for such a huge piece of software. It shocks me that the beta testing phase was as short as it was, and I was happy to get my hands on it and start using it myself. But essentially, we're in an open beta. It's not really release level software because there's so many glitches that should have been caught, could have been caught, should have been caught. Things that are fairly straightforward and obvious, and it bugs me. It really does that you know, they didn't catch these things. It speaks to just, and maybe it speaks to the scope of the project in terms of the number of aircraft and airports and everything else being worked on. That yes, okay, it took a lot of effort, and the team is only so large and they only have so much time in a day. But then, I just feel like it wasn't quite ready when they brought it out. It still needed more work, and somebody at Microsoft said, nope, we have to launch it this day, it has to be ready, you have to release it, whatever state it's in, make it at least workable and playable, and go with it. And that, you know, and it's sad that they're taking more and more plays from the Microsoft playbook. They're breaking things all the time now. Every update seems to break almost as many things as it fixes. Perfect example is the bush missions in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I did a video showing you the one of the bush flights, and they're really kind of fun flights. They're very small airports, low and slow, enjoy the scenery kind of flying. Multi-stage journeys though. the one in California is something like 27 or 30 stages of like 20 or 30 minute, 40-minute length flights, like not particularly long flights, but a whole ton of them. So in the latest update, I don't know what they did, but they changed something whereby it doesn't recognize your progress that you've already made in these bush missions. So you go in, it's funny because it does partly, but then it doesn't recognize any new progress. So if you go to the bush mission, it says, oh yes, it still has a check mark that you've completed the legs you've done before. However, if you go to try and fly the next leg, it never completes successfully. And the only way to get the next leg to complete successfully is to go right back to the beginning and start again and start checking off the legs one at a time from the beginning, even though they're still checked off. The list says you've finished these legs, but you can't actually do any more legs without going back and starting right from the beginning, and that's incredibly frustrating. Like we were 12 legs, I think, into this bush mission, 10 or 12 legs. There was a good 3 or 4 or 5 hours of flying into this bush mission, and then to have it reset like that. And the fact that it has the check marks in the box makes me think that some of the information is still being stored, and Microsoft just simply changed something about the way it's being registered and stored. But they need to provide some backward compatibility. People put effort into these things already. I don't want to go... and not that I didn't enjoy it, but I don't want to go back and start the whole bush mission again and do all these legs again. I want to pick up from where I left off. But on that last update, the one... I don't think it was the one with the Japan update, but the previous update before that, the one I think dropped in like mid-September, it broke the bush missions. We went to go do them and we couldn't finish a leg. And it's like, why? And then it was only when I went to the forums and I found out that, like, oh, everybody says this. Unless you go and start from the beginning again, even if you've done 10 legs or 20 legs or 25 legs, unless you start from the beginning again, it won't recognize new progress anymore. Guys, come on, like, what do you guys? What kind of testing process are you guys using before you release these updates? Because it seems like there's none. It seems like you just change some stuff, send it out there, and wait till people complain about it. And it's not like this is an operating system that is integral to some business function. It's purely entertainment software, but still, along the way, we shouldn't be breaking stuff that already works. It's incredibly frustrating. I've had one of my friends has after the last update was almost unusable. The sim crashed consistently every time it got loaded, whereas previously it was working just fine, and he got to the point where he's just going to uninstall it because it's not fun. It's just frustrating, and I hear that. I can't stand when software doesn't work, especially when it's like I've said before, just a hobby. We're here to have fun. We're here to enjoy ourselves, and if you're sitting there banging your head against the wall just trying to make it work for hours on end, it's not fun anymore. Sometimes things need a little figuring out. You need a half an hour or so to figure something out, but if you're spending 3 hours on something and you still can't make it work after 3 hours, you've just wasted all of your leisure time. And for what? So I hope Microsoft's going to wake up a little bit and get a little bit better with their, or Asobo are going to get a little bit better with their quality control and their testing of the updates before they release them, because that it really bugged me that they broke the bush flying, because I was really enjoying the bush flying, and I really don't intend to start again from scratch on that bush mission. So I'm going to wait and see if one of the future updates fixes the progress so that it makes progress again. Now, of course, last week, or was it this week, early this week, they did one of their first major content updates. This is kind of interesting. So, for those of you that missed it, they released a major content update. It also had, software updates as well that fixed some programming bugs, but they released a major content update that included now a new downloadable version of Japan, a high-def version of Japan, if you will, especially with focus on a half dozen cities. I can't remember which ones, but a half dozen cities got an extremely close focus, lots of custom-made landmark buildings within these cities, redone, improved ground textures and satellite images to improve the level of realism. And I I was happy to see this. It's a pity that it happened after I finished my whole mission through Japan. I would have loved to have flown Japan with an even more improved thing. It's interesting to. It's an interesting way of tackling it, as sort of at a country at a time. But it's not even the whole country. It's certain focus areas of that country. But it makes me wonder, what are they going to focus in on next? Someone highlighted this in an article, and I think it's probably true to a certain degree, that Microsoft Flight Simulator's level of detail is still highly Euro-American centric. The European areas and the North American areas especially got a heavy dose of detail. And I noticed this in the airports, that they tried to sort of spread out the airports around the world, but in terms of then the more background detail, it seems like, if not the focus, it seems that perhaps the experimentation happened more in the European and North American areas, and the algorithms were tuned to use the information more precisely and more accurately within those areas. And I'll say this, as I flew through the Aleutian Islands were terrible in a lot of cases. The coastlines were just ragged geometric shapes. They were not... They didn't have very many natural curves to them in a lot of cases. They literally were polygons. Noticeable, obvious polygons. And that's a little bit just, again, frustrating, because I feel like it could have been done better. You go and you look at the satellite imagery. You go onto Bing Maps, which of course is their basis of their scenery, and you look at their satellite imagery, and it's not always the highest quality in a lot of areas, but in a lot of areas where it was high quality, it seems like the Aleutian Islands got a pass. It's just like, oh, we're just going to load some very generic data. The airports are sort of in there, and we'll let it generate some random trees, but the textures are not there. There's entire airports that are just blanked out, that are missing, just gone, just don't exist there at all, and it's been a bit of a frustrating experience to try and fly it after seeing some of the really nice areas, some of the more popular areas, if you will. But I would think that the Aleutian Islands would be a very popular place to fly. There is some absolutely gorgeous scenery along there, challenging weather, some very challenging approaches. Airports pointed literally at mountains. Where did I fly the other day? Let me see if I've got it here. If I can find it. So the other day I did a flight into Kodiak, Alaska, and this is the main runway at the airport here. You do the approach to runway, I think it's 27, and you land, and this is what's in front of you when you land. And this was a low visibility landing, as you can probably tell from the picture here. It was not a great day, and it wasn't until we started rolling out on the runway that we saw this giant mountain off the other end. There are some very challenging airports to fly into in the Aleutian Islands. So it's a bit sad. This one was actually not too bad. The detail level in this area was pretty good. This is sort of more the eastern Aleutians, but when you are in the more remote western Aleutians, the lack of detail, the almost childishness, the P3D level of detail on the western islands was just disappointing. Very disappointing. I know they can do better. I wish they would do better, and again, maybe it's a case of tuning the algorithms more, but I feel like the Aleutian Islands didn't even get run through half the algorithms, the detailed algorithms. They just got the most generic data, and that was it. So I wonder how that's going to play out with their content updates. Are they going to focus on areas, hopefully, that have been more neglected? Japan was mostly pretty good, but there were some areas I found that were not great. What areas are they going to focus on next? I haven't really flown in Africa in the new sim, but people say that Africa as well is not particularly well represented. Asia is not particularly well represented because it's not where a lot of, I guess, the customers of this sim are located. So they kind of got, got a little bit of the shaft. They didn't work as hard to make the scenery look as good in certain areas. There's certain areas of Africa that really they emphasize very well, look nice, but the overall background data, when you're flying in between, when you're flying to just sort of random places that they were not focused on, is really quite poor quality in some places. So I hope that that's something that's going to be improved. I wonder what, it leads me to speculate. What do you think is going to be the next region that they work on? I couldn't even venture a guess. I mean, there's so much of the world that's out there. So many beautiful areas to fly through. I couldn't even begin to hazard a guess as to what would be next after Japan. You know, my first thoughts are Australia, perhaps, something like that. Something, again, you know, sort of Western, sort of Pacific nation, I think. But again, these are places that are foreign to me that I don't think it got a whole lot of detail, but I don't know because I haven't flown them enough. You know, are you going to do a whole country, or are you just going to do a small regional area? And I guess you've got to look at what your third-party developers are doing, too. I mean, very quickly people are coming out with third-party scenery. There was a Tokyo third-party scenery release just at the same time as Microsoft released their, or Asobo released their version of Tokyo and several major Japanese airports. So how, you know, which one's more detailed, and you know, how much is Asobo going to be competing with the third-party developers, and the third-party developers are going to be competing with Asobo to see who is more, who's putting out the scenery first, who's emphasizing these areas. I don't even know where to hypothesize they would go next. A Caribbean nation would also be fun, and a Caribbean nation could be done, you know, a Caribbean island could be done very easily. It's a relatively small land area. You can do a very detailed rendition of a smaller area, like Princess Juliana, of course, always comes to mind as one of the most dramatic and iconic Caribbean airports. But there's lots of other ones out there, so that could be an interesting thing for them to tackle. Or maybe something very different, maybe some mountainous terrain. Italy might be another beautiful place to set up some really beautiful cities to fly over. I don't know. Curious to see where they take us. One thing I did like about it was the fact that it's a free content upgrade, but it's listed in the marketplace as an optional upgrade, and I kind of like that too. Rather than force people to download tons of content for areas they may not visit, if you're not going to visit Japan ever, there's no point in downloading this and storing it on your computer. So I do kind of like this idea of packaging up different regions in a, you know, in an independent DLC kind of mode where you can download what you feel like you're going to utilize, but not waste your time and your hard drive space on areas you're not going to utilize, because I don't know how much this Japan update was, but my gathering was it was several gigs, multiple gigs just to download the update. I like that kind of mode of operation. Hand in hand with that, though, I think also would be an option to automatically download areas that you think you're going to fly to. So if you go to the create a flight page and you create a flight in Japan, have an option where you can automatically download these free updates for places you will visit, rather than trying to remember, because this is another problem that you get into when you get so much scenery in this world, so many different sceneries out there, is you start to forget what's available out there. What's in your own personal library out of payware perhaps, but also what's available for free. When there's so much of it, and already there's been a cavalcade of free airports that have come at us that we all are able to freely download if you want to visit that particular airport. But I find myself, I'm trying not to download things I don't think I'm going to necessarily visit, or maybe wait until I know for sure I am going to visit them, rather than fill my hard drive right off the bat with tons of scenery data that I'm never going to use. So having like an option where it will, you know, say, hey, there is downloadable scenery for this, or even automatically download that scenery for you when you set up that flight. A little bit of a problem if, of course, you don't have a fast download speed and it's going to take you several hours to download that scenery, but it, you know, something like that where it can remind you that, hey, there's better scenery available for this area might be a useful addition to the user interface. Anyways, not too much else happened since I did my last stream. It was, what, 4 or 5 days ago. Really wasn't too much news. I think I pretty much everything. I covered a lot of stuff in the last one, and then nothing much else has dropped really this week of much interest. So the one thing that, the question of the day, I tried to start this a couple streams ago, and I sort of failed on it because I found a lot of other things to talk about. But the question of the day that I was going to put up today, and hopefully some of you guys will respond to it in the YouTube chat as well, is if you had to pick an airport the next airport you want to see brought into the Microsoft Flight Simulator world. What would be your top priority as an airport that you want to see? There's several out there already that have been released. There's Flightbeam's Denver, FS Dream Team's Chicago, Orbex has done London City and Innsbruck. Latin VFR has released Miami and they just released San Diego. I believe FS Dream Team was the ones that also did Key West. There's been a bunch of different mixture of airports. What would you like to see as be your next highest priority in terms of airports you'd like to see brought into the new sim? There's quite a few that I can think of. I couldn't narrow it down. I'd have a hard time narrowing it down into just one. I mean, for me, of course, Toronto would be important on my list. Toronto, Montreal would be very important on my list because Toronto is my home base. I really want to see that come to the new sim. I want to see a good version of that come to the new sim. But there's other ones out there. As an airline simmer here, I want to see the major hubs, I think, first before much else. So the one that comes to mind first off the bat to me is Frankfurt. It's one of the big hubs in Europe that really, I think, should come to the new sim sooner than later. It seems like there's been quite a bit of North American love for major hubs already. Again, Chicago and Denver being high on that list. European hubs, not so much really released yet. A lot of smaller European airports, sort of secondary airports in Europe, but the major hubs haven't had any good releases yet. Frankly, I don't count the Asobo built-in releases as being good releases anymore after having seen a couple of them. So Frankfurt would be high on my list of airports I think I'd want to see released. A good version of Dubai and Hong Kong would also be high on that list. I just don't even know where to go sometimes with it. It seems like the North American hubs got a lot of attention early on. There's no JFK yet, but I'm sure that's coming before too long. But Atlanta would be a good one to see in North America. But I think European hubs really kind of need a little focus time. So the London Heathrow, the Amsterdam, the Frankfurt, those kind of airports I think are some of the ones that really need to come to the sim sooner than later to provide a focal point somewhere we can all sort of work from. But I'm curious to hear what other people think about what the number one airports they want to see imported into the new sim by the third-party developers. And it doesn't necessarily have to be airports that have been made by third-party. Just your wish list. What airport would you really love to see in a super detailed version in Microsoft Flight Simulator? All right, how are we doing here? Coming up on 1500 Zulu. Still got about 3 hours to go. It's going to be just before 1800 Zulu that we land in Montreal. We got a lot of oceanic flying going on now. Just going to take one more quick look at my VATSPy and see if there's too much else going on, but there really is not too much. Hopefully there might be some Boston Center as we pass through their airspace and some Montreal on later. So one thing I've never really talked about too much, and I thought I might take some time to talk about it today, is just talk about the process of flight planning, and reading the flight plan, reading a LIDO flight plan, since that's the type of flight plan that you get generated usually by SimBrief here, and what do you look for in a LIDO flight plan? Because this has been a constant complaint in the airline industry for some time, is certainly by flight crews, and it's not trying to be whining, but it's trying to be practical. Here's a typical flight plan for a typical flight. So this is a 4-hour flight that we did today, Punta Cana to Montreal, and just look at the number right here at the top. The flight plan is 41 pages long. This is one single flight, and all the information for this flight takes up 41 pages. That's a lot of information to take in. And you don't have a whole lot of time as a pilot to take this information in. So the general setup, first of all, is that when you sit down in the flight deck, or not sit down, when you get to the airport, most airlines usually have a 1-hour check-in. So 1 hour before departure is when the pilots generally show up at the airport. For international flights, it might be a little longer, but the general rule is about an hour. So you have an hour from the time you get to the airport to look over your flight plan, decide it's appropriate, and then go to the airplane and set up the whole airplane with this flight plan. So in reality, as you've seen from numerous videos, setting up the aircraft takes about 30 minutes, give or take, before departure. You need to be in the airplane and getting set up usually about 30 minutes before departure. Larger aircraft sometimes take longer just because the boarding takes longer. Not that the setup takes longer, but the boarding takes longer. So, take off 5 to 10 minutes to walk to the gate from the crew room, and you have generally about a 15 to 20 minute window to look over 41 pages of information and decide if this is all suitable for your flight. And when it comes down to it, that's a lot of information to take in and try to process really quickly and evaluate really quickly. And a lot of this is pages of diagrams, maps and stuff like that too. So you can sort of, the nice thing about a map is that you can take one look at it, and generally you can get the information out of a map fairly quickly here. So that last page is just the end of document page, but we have about 5 or 6 pages of maps. So here's our vertical profile of the flight, just so you can see the winds at various altitudes. It also gives you an overlay of the terrain underneath, and even shows you where the tropopause is, the top of the troposphere, where temperatures basically stabilize at their coldest altitude or their coldest temperature within the atmosphere. So from the ground up to this point, temperatures decrease at a somewhat steady rate, and then when they reach this point, the tropopause, they stop decreasing. The temperature just becomes constant. Usually happens around minus 56 degrees is the standard, but of course it varies from season to season, from area to area. And we got a couple pages of maps here with different winds at different altitudes, so some of them may not totally be relevant depending on what you're expecting for a flight level. This is 390, which is way above where we're going to be able to get to based on our current load. 340 and 300. So 340 is closest, so this is the one that's most relevant to us. You can see the general gist of the winds anyways, regardless of the altitude that you're at. And you've also got some significant weather diagrams. There are some isolated embedded CBs along our route here. And we can also see the jet stream. So that's about 6 pages out of the 41, but there's still about 35 pages of text here. So how do you sit down and parse through this quickly enough to be able to make a reasonable decision about whether this flight plan is a reasonable flight plan? It's not always easy. There's a lot of stuff coming at you. Now, of course, the modern flight planning software does kind of take a lot of the work out. In terms of making calculations, it does a lot of calculations very quickly for you, and it provides a lot of the background information. Oftentimes you don't need to see the individual calculations, you just kind of want to see the bottom line numbers, but the calculations are listed to help you with the information. So I'm going to sort of walk you through the things that I look for, and probably the most important things that I look for. Obviously, you want to just recheck and just make sure you are looking at the correct flight plan, you have the correct flight number, date, airports listed, and so on. There is some reference information about your flight right here, so your average wind, your distance that you're going to fly, your cost index, that sort of thing. Usually the biggest bottom line that you're looking for in these flight plans is the routing and the fuel planning. So depending on where you're going, there may be multiple routes. Oftentimes there's only sort of one preferred route, especially if you're on a shorter flight. If you're on an hour to an hour and a half flight, there's usually only one preferred route that may be filed by the airline. If it's not that normal route that you're used to seeing, then usually that's the first tip off that there's got to be some kind of weather or something going on that's making you take a slightly different route. Either the winds are way out of whack, or the weather is prohibiting going the normal route. But even so, you want to have a good look at your route and make sure it makes sense. If there's any strange turns or waypoints in it, and again, you can go to the map to aid with this. Generally, you're going to go in a pretty straight line. If there's any weird, really big turns, you go all the way over here to make a turn over here, you're going to say, well, why are we doing that? First thing is you probably want to look at the weather and see is there weather that's impacting our normal route that we're going around, and that's probably the most likely reason. If you see a more gentle turn, oftentimes you may be trying to take advantage of some better winds. So if you were to fly this way and sort of head up this way and try to fly up the coast like that, it may just be an indication the computer has calculated that the most optimal route will actually be to fly a little bit longer, but to get you into these big tailwinds and ride those tailwinds all the way home. So the routing is one of the big things you want to look at. Probably the biggest thing you want to really look at is fuel. And you can go ahead and check the numbers and recalculate what the computer's calculated, but the biggest thing is to look and say, how much fuel do I need, and how much extra fuel am I being given? This is probably the bottom line. This is the most important thing that you usually end up looking at in the flight plan, is how much extra fuel do you get? You don't want to ever leave with just 0 extra fuel. You don't want to leave with the absolute minimum, because that gives you very little room for contingencies. There's always contingency fuel included anyways, but the contingency fuel that's legally required is usually very small. It's about 5% extra. You can burn through a 5% extra very quickly, especially at lower altitudes. So it's not something that you want to really depend on. That 5%, I usually personally tend to disregard that as that is my, if things really go wrong and something really surprising happens, that's my contingency fuel for that. If you have any expectation that there's going to be any kind of delays, you should already have extra fuel. Now, LIDO doesn't break it down on this flight plan. Our company breaks it down into usually 2 different reasons for extra fuel. And those 2 different reasons are broken down into usually ATC or weather. If you're expecting volume delays, ATC delays, then you'll ask for an extra 10 or 15 or 20 minutes or whatever you expect for ATC. If there's bad weather en route that you may need to go around, or perhaps there's some turbulence reported that you may want to go to a higher or lower flight level, you may end up burning more fuel to get to a different flight level, then they may put that under the weather fuel. So you always want to have some kind of extra fuel, and that's usually the first thing I go to, is how much extra fuel do I have today to deal with emergencies. 15 minutes is not bad. 10 minutes is okay if you think it's going to be a pretty okay flight without too many likely bad scenarios. But if you're starting to see bad weather at your destination, you can expect tons of ATC delays, a ground delay program. Now you're talking about, okay, let's get 45 minutes of extra fuel in the airplane. So you never want to just take it as no extra fuel. You always want to have some extra fuel to deal with eventualities. There's always going to be problems in aviation, whether it be weather causing a problem, ATC, maybe there's been an emergency at your destination airport and all the other arrivals are being held while the emergency lands and they take care of them. You never know what's going to happen, even on a beautiful sunny day. So it's always incumbent to make sure we do have extra fuel. So when you file in SimBrief, by default it goes to 0 extra. Never leave that at 0 extra. Always pack on a little bit of extra. Put another 10 or 15 minutes at the minimum in the tanks. If the weather's going to be bad, put more than that. That's usually the first thing I go to. The second thing I'll usually go to is I'll look at the combination of the route and the altitude, just sort of compare that to what I know as being normal, make sure that they do make sense. If the altitude's way out of whack, ask the reason why. And hopefully your dispatcher will have put some comments in. Well, normally you do this at 330, but today we're filed at 270 just due to turbulence. There's moderate to severe turbulence reported at 330, so we're going to put you low. So it's going to burn more fuel, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to be a nicer ride than flying through moderate to severe turbulence. So there might be a reason why your altitude's a little bit unusual. So you should always ask that question if the altitude's a little unusual. It might be a little bit lower just because if it's a short flight, that's as high as you can get that day. But on a longer flight, ask the questions. Why are we going at a lower altitude? The next thing I'll check is the alternate. I'll check the alternate. What is our alternate for today? And I'll check the weather at the alternate versus the destination. And that's also included in the flight plan. That's also down here somewhere. I can go to it this way. Airport weather list. Our departure point. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to do this because I'm getting a bit of a neck strain from constantly turning my head here. But so go to even before I go to the destination, I'll usually go to the alternate, as I want to see clear skies or very close to clear skies. I want to see cab okay. I don't even want to see like down to this meets alternate minimums, it's 1,200 feet or something like that. I want to see 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 foot ceilings, 5 to 10 miles visibility. I don't want to see anything low. Alternates should be a complete gimme. There should never even be a question that, oh wow, the alternate's kind of lousy, are we going to even get into the alternate? It should never be a question you should have to ask. The alternate is the backup plan. It should be ready to go without a hitch. After I've checked the alternate weather, then I go back and I check our destination weather. Okay, so yeah, we got some light rain showers here, but no low ceilings or anything. Winds out of the southwest, so they're probably going to swing around to land on 24 right, most likely in Montreal later today. Nothing too bad there. But nothing too low. A little bit of light rain showers, but no low ceilings or low visibility or anything like that. So after I've determined how much extra fuel we have, I then usually go look at the weather, and it might affect my opinion about how much fuel we need, but that's usually sort of the first thing that's usually the second or third thing I go to check. Once you've checked all of that, I go to check the load, mostly because the cabin crew is usually concerned with the load. So how many people are we estimating that we're going to have on board today? 213. It's pretty much almost a full flight. Kind of sucks for the cabin crew because they're going to have to do a lot of service, a lot of work, but that's also going to affect the weight. You know, if it's a full flight, you know, if it's a full flight, you're not going to have all that much extra room for fuel, depending on the takeoff weight and where you're going. And you'll notice here, there's a possible extra of 2.1 here. So based on the different parameters, I could possibly take as much as 2.1. So, and you'll notice there's a max column here as well, which is really neat in the weights column here. So when you're trying to mentally process a flight plan and you're looking at it and you're saying, well, the weather does look great, can we take a little bit more fuel? There might be a chance you can't. If you're doing a really long flight, or if your alternate's really far away and you've got a max landing weight issue, you may not be able to take much more fuel than you've already given. The dispatcher may have already given you as much fuel as they can. So don't start asking for more fuel until you come here and check what is the maximum fuel I can take. So today our plan was at 16.6, however the maximum amount of fuel we can take is 18.6. And this here was based on, I'm not even sure what this is based on here. I think this was based, because it should normally give you a reason. This is not quite 100% like the LIDO flight plan I'm used to here. Because there will be a restriction. Usually there'll be a couple of different restrictions. Usually the restrictions will either be takeoff weight, so there'll be a, you know, obviously every airplane has maximum takeoff weight. You can't fill the fuel past the max takeoff weight. However, there's also possibly a limit of your landing weight. So the amount of fuel you have to have in the tanks to get to your alternate, plus of course the amount of people in the plane, might mean that your landing weight is very close to maximum. You can't bring a lot of extra fuel, or you'll get to your destination and you'll find you're too heavy to land and you have to burn off some fuel anyways. Or it might even be that your ZFW, the maximum zero fuel weight in the airplane, is a limit. So there could be different reasons why you'll have a limit. LIDO will specify though what is the cause, or how much extra you've got that you could take. So you know, if there was weather concerns, we could possibly take as much as this without having to displace passengers. Sometimes this might be zero. Sometimes the dispatcher might have given you everything you can, and just because of the takeoff weight and the landing weight limitations, you might have only 20 minutes of extra fuel because that's all you can afford to take. So, but it's important to look and see where those options are. You'll be kicking yourself if you end up doing a go-around and converting to an alternate because you didn't bring enough fuel in the first place. After that, the other thing, of course, you need to look at, you've got a nice big nav log here. It shows you all the calculations and how the computer came up with everything that you're going to do and how long it's going to take you to fly each leg. In the pre-flight planning phase, that's not necessarily so important. The other big thing you're going to come and look at then is also the NOTAMs and see how these are going to impact your flight. So you're going to want to just check, the biggest things you're going to want to check for are runway closures. That can obviously make a really big deal on your day. Runway closures and approach systems that can be out of service. Those are usually the biggest things that are going to impact your operation, because those might determine how you're going to approach the airport. They may affect the alternate airport criteria if there's certain runways or approaches that aren't available at your alternate or your destination. You know, there may be issues with equipment. With the equipment you have on board. There may be issues with, you know, because a higher minimum's on a certain approach, but this is the only approach that's available today because of the winds, and the weather's a little bit poor. That combination altogether may mean we can't get to our destination, or that we don't have good odds of successfully landing on our destination. So you want to be ready with these kind of things. This is not a bad set of NOTAMs today. This is... And sadly, this is not a bad set. This is 2 pages worth of NOTAMs to cover our origin, our destination, and our alternate. And don't forget to check the NOTAMs at your alternate, because that will impact your alternate selection. There could be a runway closure there that may make it no longer viable as a landing airport, or there may be, you know, an ILS may be down or something for maintenance that may make it no longer viable as an alternate airport, depending on the weather. So make sure you check your alternate airport NOTAMs before you leave as well. You don't want to wait till you're halfway there and then realize that, oh, the alternate we have is not good and there's no other alternate that's close enough that we have enough fuel to get there. Now you've really painted yourself into a corner. The trouble is that, like I said, this is actually a very simple set of NOTAMs. It's 2 pages. certain airports you go to, there may be 4 or 5 pages of NOTAMs for one airport, let alone the other 2 that you're dealing with for that day. So sometimes there may be 10 or 12 pages of NOTAMs that you have to in 10 to 15 minutes peruse through and glean enough information out of them that you can determine that the flight has a reasonable chance of success today, and have a reasonable strategy on how you're going to finish that flight successfully. Look at this. Like, I've already spent just 15 minutes explaining these things to you, and I haven't even gone through like all the pages of the flight plan here. So this is one of the big issues that we have, I think, in aviation today, is we have so much information at our fingertips, but sometimes gleaning the really truly necessary information out of that giant pile of information that you're presented with, it can be really difficult. Like I said, this is not a particularly complicated flight. It's a 4-hour flight, but it's 41 pages of information we're being given here. And you talk about a longer overseas flight, there could be, twice that many pages. And how is any one person reasonably expected to go through that? So you do your best to glean the really important information out of the flight. You take a look at the fuel situation. That's probably one of the most important things, because that's one of the things that you can have an impact on. You can change the fuel loading on the flight before you depart. So very important to check that. Check the weather. Make sure that the weather is suitable to the destination and the alternate. Check the upper winds, see how they're going to impact your flight. And check the NOTAMs, because the NOTAMs could also impact what you're able to do at your destination, and especially at your alternate, what might be available to you as an alternate, and whether or not your alternate is really suitable. I've more than once in my career had to change alternates because the NOTAMs indicated that they were totally not suitable as an alternate. I had one time where we were going to do a flight and checked the NOTAM for the alternate airport, and the alternate airport's NOTAM said that there were 2 feet of snow. There was 2 feet of snow on the runway, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm not landing this airplane in a 2-foot snowdrift on a runway when I'm nearly running out of gas because I missed at the original destination. So I called the dispatcher like, oh yeah, I guess you're right, I guess we can do that. And it's partly upon the dispatchers to try and catch these things, but at the end of the day, the captain in the airplane has the ultimate responsibility, the ultimate control of what happens on the flight. So it's ultimately up to the captain to decide if something is suitable, and catch these mistakes. The dispatchers are there to assist you, and they should be catching these things to begin with, but like everything else, dispatchers are often overworked. They often have multiple flights. Well, they will have multiple flights on the go. They're doing planning on multiple flights. If they have any kind of unusual situations happening on any of their flights that require focus, whether it be an emergency, an unruly passenger, weather deteriorating in a certain area that they're covering, that they're dealing with flights that are diverting and whatnot, their mental resources can quickly be drained, and they may miss some of the simpler things, in a flight plan. So make sure you take the time to look at those flight plans, look at some of the really truly important stuff that will impact how you get to your destination and the odds of successful completion of your flight. Anyways, we have now been at this for almost 2 hours here, and as is tradition on my long-haul flights, or even medium-haul flights, we're going to take a little bit of a break here for a little while. I've talked until I pretty much have a sore throat now, just from talking, so I think we're going to take a little step out of the flight deck for a little while, guys. We're going to take a little break. Let's just have one more quick look here. Before we do take our break, let's have a look here and just see... Well, what are you doing here, Track IR? Try and get a look at the FMS here. So, we're still showing landing in Montreal at 17:55, and if I go down here a little bit, I'm just trying to determine. I always find these keys are backwards here. Where our top of descent is, so looks like our top of descent is somewhere between Cambridge and Peterborough, 1724. So that would probably be an appropriate place to start planning our descent. So we're going to step out of the flight deck for probably almost 2 hours now, barring any ATC coming online. If we get some ATC online, we may come back a little bit sooner. But right now, the plan is come back in the flight deck by around 1720 Zulu. Check in periodically, just glance at it to see if there's any ATC online. But if there's no ATC online, we're just going to carry on with what we're doing. And yeah. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned, and we will hopefully have the conclusion of our flight here. Successful landing in Montreal in about just a little over 2 hours time. So thank you guys so much for watching, for listening, and we will see you guys real soon. Alright guys, hello, Captain Nav is back with you once again, a little bit earlier than anticipated because we did get our wish and we have finally got some VATSIM ATC online. We don't get it all the time, but we do get it, sometimes, and especially during the day. You take it when you can get it. I know most people work during the day, most people are not home during the day, and generally people are controlling in their own time zones. So anywhere in North America, I wouldn't expect much control before the evening hours in North America. So I'm happy to have some ATC online. Let's just go really quickly into the flight deck and let's go ahead and tune this up. Alright, 34.7. Into the flight deck. Lots of stuff, wow. Lots of stuff on there. Okay, so first things first, let's get this tuned up. Let's get that silly thing out of the way because it's annoying when it's in the way when you're trying to do stuff. Too far. There we go. Let's see here, what have we got? Let's do VOR DMEs. Yeah, let's zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're close to here. I forget what it is, if it's Calverton, CCC is Calverton. I would have to check my Navigraph charts on a different screen. I want to say Calverton, anyways. Just a second, let's just find out so we can give them a good idea of where we are. Let's make sure we get the right name of the VOR on here. Yeah, it is Calverton, I was right. Okay, good, okay. And we are 30 miles. Boston Center, good afternoon. Transat 335. With you, flight level 330, about 30 miles south of Calverton, VOR.
Center, step away, he'll be right back.
Okay then, thank you. That's why I was so quiet on the frequency. Well, how was I to know, right? I just tuned in. I didn't hear anybody talking, so I talked. Alright, while we're waiting for him to come back, let's go ahead and have a quick little look here. Let's go into our cruise data here, just make sure. So 53, and so we've used about 10,580 kilograms of fuel on top of the 6,500 we have remaining. 17,000, that adds up, so we've used the right amount of fuel. We haven't leaked any. Our pressure differential is working nicely today. Let's see here. Let's just check our bottom line here. Montreal, still showing 1753 arrival into Montreal, 4.8 in the tanks. We got quite a bit of extra fuel. We got that tailwind bombing up behind us now, 218 at from 218 at 113 knots. So it's not a total tailwind, but it's definitely adding huge to our component. Our true airspeed is, where do you get the true airspeed off this airplane? True airspeed there, yeah, it's right next to each other. 473, our ground speed was 512. Now we're kind of turning a little bit into the wind, so we're losing some ground speed, but we still got a good 500 plus on the ground speed, so we're doing good. We're going to get there quickly here. We're going to be there in a little less than an hour, so we're already going to start thinking about our descent. Let's just zoom out a little bit. So there's the arrival into Montreal. Cambridge, shortly after Cambridge is our top of descent point there. So we're going to start thinking about setting ourselves up for the arrival into Montreal. So I'm going to come back again to my other screen. Just looking at my VPilot on my other screen here, and it says winds variable at 2, 15 miles light rain. So that does not help me much in terms of determining an active runway. So I'm going to use my one other cheat that I have here. It's not a cheat, but it's just a good piece of information to have. So.
Actually, Sierra cleared low approach. Right, 3-4 cleared low approach, down exit.
Boston Center, good afternoon. Transat 335 with you, flight level 330, about 10 miles south of Calverton.
Transat 335, Boston Center, good afternoon. Radar contact position as reported, squawk 4752.
4752 coming up for Transat 335. So for those of you that have never seen this, this is NavCanada's aviation weather site, flightplanning.navcanada.ca, and one of the more useful things when you're trying to figure out what runways in use,
429 looks like New York is close. And no further
especially
ATC available for you. Radar service terminated. Frequency change approved. Have a good flight.
Understand.
especially during let's see here, low
Power failure, so you'll try it another day.
low wind situations where you're not sure what's going to be the active runway. You can go to the live RVR page, and there's a live RVR window for every airport in Canada that has RVR readouts. So if you go to Montreal, you'll have the current winds posted here. So right now the winds are calm, the altimeter setting, and what you'll also see is which approaches are currently turned on. So as well as the current RVR and light settings of the various runways. So 24 right is offline along with 6 left and 6 right. It looks like the only ILS that's online right now is 24 left. So if I was a betting man, I would bet that 24 left is the runway to use.
Thank you. Climb and maintain 5,000.
Now this is the first ATC. Yeah, no, I'm talking definitely louder than him. He's very loud in my ears, so I'm just going to turn my headset down just a smidge here, just to be able to hear myself think over the ATC. Not that I want to hear the ATC, but I just want to be able to talk to myself as well. Anyways, so it looks like 24 left is the active arrival runway in Montreal. So let's go ahead and set that up.
November 7 Romeo Sierra to set up pass discretion, maintain 5,000. PD down to 5.
Okay, I'm going to put the wrong one in there just because I have to reset the arrival as well. This is one problem I find with the, and I'm not sure if this is an Airbus problem or if this is just like the way Aerosoft has programmed this, but changing the, if you change the approach but not the arrival, none of the waypoints will shift even though the arrival may need to be different for a different runway. So now we've got it all in there. Let's go ahead and put that all in there. Then we've got a discontinuity.
American 2702, grab the altimeter 295. Expect vectors ILS runway 24 approach.
Hey, 295, 24 approach, American 2702.
Now for some reason my P-Bird...
2702, turn left heading 100, vector to final, just going to maintain 5,000.
Okay, left turn 100 down 5,000, American 2702.
For some reason my P-Bird disappeared. I think it's the only waypoint that's missing, so maybe we'll just put that back in there manually.
Boston Center, good afternoon, November 5739 Juliet.
There we go. Cambridge P-Bird, and then our arrival. And we'll just double check the waypoints in a minute when we pull up the arrival charts. In the meantime, we're just going to hit performance page. We're going to get some landing numbers here. So assuming we want to do a flap-free landing, go back and look at my weather again. It's altimeter 2994, temperature 11 degrees. So 11 degrees and 2994, and we should put it into inches of mercury. There we go. 2994, config 3. So now it's got our speeds. We still need to put our ILS minimums in there. So let's go ahead and do this. Get the keyboard up. There it is.
Thank you for Zulu and Squawk 4772.
Montreal is our airport of arrival. Excellent. Charts. We're going to need the Carter 3, so let's add that to the kneeboard.
2 miles southeast of Boston, altitude 3,500.
Let's add airport info.
VFI present heading, expect runway 3.
And let's add the ILS to 24 left.
Citizen to the Cloud Bravo, airspace present heading, expect runway 33 left. 439 Juliet.
I like that too, that it shows it. Okay. So I think we've just about got all of the information we need for the arrival set up here. Oh, we need the, that's right, we need the barrel mins. Just sipping my coffee here. Okay.
Number 7 Romeo Sierra, turn right heading, what's question, turn heading 350, back to the final.
Right 350, 7 Romeo Sierra.
Barrel mins 318.
Expect the ILS runway 33 left approach, fighting 060, back to the final.
And there we go. So we got barrelman set to 318. I think we're doing good here. Okay. I think I've got everything in there that I need to get in there. Let's do this. Before we do anything else, let's just have a quick look at those charts, that list of NOTAMs again, because it was a bit extensive for Montreal. So let's just make sure. Runway 1028 doesn't impact us. Golf, Bravo 1, Bravo 3, Bravo 2, north of Bravo, closed. Bravo 1 and Bravo 3, edge lights. Low vis procedures not authorized on 6 left, 24 right. Stop bars are unserviceable. Swissport fueling's available only with prior notification. Charlie closed, Echo between 6 left and Bravo. 1028 closed, available as taxiway. Fresh touchdown zone lighting on 6 left, holding base 6 left. Approach light distance 6 left, and runway 6 left, 24 right closed. Doesn't even have an expiry, it's just closed. And 6 left, 24 right, all procedures are not authorized. 24 left, but LNAV minima. ILS 10 and ILS runway 6 left. So none of that impacts our arrival directly. So, alright. So a quick NOTAM check revealed nothing of consequence to us, so we are good to go with an approach briefing. Let's just get the charts up there. Let's bring the... Come on. There it is. Let's just bring up the flight plan so we can follow through. So the speeds are in. We'll say that the distances were checked by our dispatcher. Are you ready for the approach briefing?
Air Force One, I really don't have any other pyre-ups in that area.
Okay.
Barely anything close to that altitude.
So today we're going to be doing the Carter 3 RNAV arrival into Montreal, Trudeau. The effective date is the 30th of November of 2018 on plate 10-2 Alpha. And we have RNAV 1, DDI GNSS required. The aircraft is suitably equipped. Safe altitude for 100 miles is 74, and non-GNSS aircraft, that's not us, we have GNSS. Airport elevation's at 118 feet. We can check the ATIS if anyone put one up. Alright, so we're going to start the arrival at Peaburg. From Peaburg, we're going to go to LATS at or above 11,000. You can see it's crossing LATS 11,100 there, so it's set. Ebb dot at or below 11,000. That'll be 8645. That checks. Done up. At or below 9,000. We're going to be at 6,500 by the time we get there. MATEP, LTAT, Sildo at a max 210 knots and 4,000 feet, and we're going to hit those both precisely according to the FMS. And Curdo between 3 and 4. It's going to stay at 4 if I let the FMS fly it. And OMVAL. And after that, we're going to continue on the 057 track. Yep, there it is. Until we get fed around 4, an ILS to runway 24 left. So this is published on plate 11-4 and effective on the 10th of September of 2020. So this is almost brand new. Let's just see what the changes are, because I have not been free for a little while. So changes: a new MSA, new missed approach, ALNAV glide slope VDA altitude was changed, and CDA date. I honestly don't know what CDA stands for. Alright, so let's read this carefully because it's changed from the last time I did this. So the LOC frequency is going to be 110.5. Let's just check the radio page. 110.5 IMQ and 237. Those are all going to auto-tune when we turn final. The glide slope at ALNAV, 1520. ALNAV here is saying 1750. I say Montreal at 1752. No, sorry, that's the time. What am I thinking? I'm sorry. Wow, apparently I've been in the flight deck for too long. 1,500 feet, which is within reason. ILSDA, we got that already, 318. And the airport touchdown zone at 118. The MSA is highest northwest of the field, northwest of Montreal VOR, way over here at 3,300. So most sectors is going to be 3,000 feet. Missed approach is to climb on a heading of 237 till 2 DME. And then a climbing left turn to 3,000 feet on a heading of 112 and intercept the Montreal VOR 144 radial to Vevsu. So I wonder if there used to be turn left to the Saint Jean VOR. I wonder if the Saint Jean VOR has been decommissioned.
31 Echo radar contact.
because they don't seem to have it on there anymore.
On to appropriate VFR.
So straight ahead to DME.
Closer in, Portsmouth altimeter
Let's see if this is in here.
29891.
It is not. This is the old missed approach procedure here, which was straight ahead to 2,000 feet and a left turn direct to Saint Jean VOR. So we cannot fly this in FMS mode. We're going to have to do it manually because we don't have this stuff tuned in here. Okay, duly noted. It did change, and we got to pay close attention there. So, notes: radar or RNAV is required.
Transat 335 for traffic. Descend and maintain flight level 290.
Okay, descend flight level 290, Transat 335.
Iberia 12 Boston Center, squawk 4671.
I'm not doing this the easy way. 290, and we'll just do.
Number 7 Romeo Sierra, turn left heading 1.
Let's do it as a VS. Can I do it as a VS?
Heading 280.
VS. There we go. All right, so flight level 290 set. VS minus 1,000.
Apologies. Turn left heading 280.
Yeah, 280, Simmer Sierra, thanks.
Okay, sorry. So where was I? Yeah, so we were in the approach here. So we've discussed that. Radar nav required. 100 miles safe. 74 local reliable. 10 degrees centerline. Procedure: turn not authorized. Common local frequencies between 6 right 24 left. Verify the loc ident for this approach. And simultaneous approach is authorized with 24 right. Now we will have a moving map display as well, so that'll help confirm that we are on the appropriate localizer. And we don't have to worry about simultaneous approaches with 24 right because it's closed for today, anyways.
905 for Sierra Bravo 79.
This is one of those interesting ones where the DME is not on the ILS frequency. So if I want the DME, it's on 110.5. Oh, it is on the same frequency, but it's at the far end of the runway. So it should automatically give you the DME readings. Let's see here. SSALR lighting system, no PAPIs, 3-degree glide slope, and RVR 2600 or a half mile. It's a pretty nice day in Montreal. A little bit rainy, but otherwise a pretty nice day. And yeah, we're going to land on 24 left, and after landing on 24 left, we're going to vacate. Right turn, convenient right turn off the runway to go to a gate. We'll probably exit on Alpha 4 here because we're going to need to go to the international gates down here to clear customs. I don't have a gate in mind. Let's pick one, shall we?
We would like ILS 35 for practice if possible, Sierra Bravo 79.
Where is parking spots and coordinates? That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, there it is. So anything in the 50s or 60s will be good for an international arrival. So we'll do 50s or 60s. We'll pick something when we get a little closer. I'll look and flight aware for a minute. Okay, that's it for the charts. Terrain is 7,400 mile, 100 safe, but only 3,000 most sectors around the airport. Weather is few at 2,500, broken at 42, so it's not too bad of a.
Over to Manchester, I'll let you know when we get closer what we want there.
Anything you want to publish this?
It's not too bad visibility. I don't think we're going to have too much of a weather issue there. And let's just check the weather at our alternate as well, because that would be prudent. Ooh, the alternate really came crashing down. 600 feet, overcast. That's not good. It still meets the minimums, but wow, that was not in the forecast. Okay, we'll discuss that in a minute. Operational, I've read the NOTAMs, nothing really applies.
335 cross EBDOT at a maintain 1000, Burlington altimeter 29904.
EBDOT at maintain 1000 for Transat 335. And Isaias Pex Zola, hola sir. Welcome to the stream. We're just starting our initial ascent here into Montreal. We were asked to descend a little bit for traffic, but our initial descent into Montreal starts in about 60 miles. So let me just finish my briefing. Weather, we didn't have too much of an issue. Operational, there's no MELs. Again, no NOTAMs that really affect the arrivals. I went through those. And fuel situation, so we got a little bit of extra fuel in the tank here. We are going to have, when we get to Montreal, we're going to have about 4.8. We got a fair bit more than we had anticipated. I don't know if that's enough to get all the way to Toronto. So let's start doing some research here, because I really don't like the fact that the weather in Ottawa has become so low. Now, what happened to being able to look up METARs and TAS in here? Because it used to be right here in the corner. Oh, there it is. It is still there. Okay, perfect. I just had to put my mouse down there. So let's do CYOW, but I don't think it's going to be very valid anymore because that is a really low ceiling there. The worst it says is broken at 700, but right now it's calling overcast at 600, so that TAF has very little validity, if you will. My next best option is probably Quebec off to the east. This does not look great. What time is it now? Let's see here. It's 1700 by the time we get there, so we'll be looking at the 1800 weather. Scattered 800 overcast with a tempo of 5 miles an hour. Shot broken at 800. Overcast 1500 and a 30% probability of 2 miles and overcast 500. Not great there. What if we were to... what if we were to go back southbound?
8 miles from Nimoy, turn left heading 360.
Burlington, Vermont. Yeah, we got on and off 800 feet. Let's go a little further south and let's go with Albany. At this point, of course, I'd get my dispatcher to sort of help me with this and try and find some useful alternates. The weather in Albany doesn't look bad. So if we have to miss in Montreal, I think Albany is probably our best bet. Let's see what the METAR says right now. Fuel at 900, broken at 5500, 1211. This very small temperature dew-point spread is what worries me a little bit. That's going to be... it could get worse. But it seems like the general trend is that if we go back south to Albany, that will work out best. So we could always ACARS our dispatcher and ask them to generate us some information about how much fuel we would need to get to Albany. So what I can do, because I am playing the role of my own dispatcher, is I can go into my SimBrief flight plan here. And let's see here. Edit this flight and let's change our alternate here to KALB and see what kind of numbers these come up with. Your dispatcher could do this remotely through your ACARS system for you. Obviously, I'm doing it for myself. Don't think we're going to have too much trouble landing in Montreal because the weather's not that bad in Montreal, but you always want to have a good alternate to get to. So let's go to the fuel section here and see what we need to get to Albany. It's about 500 kilograms more than we needed. But still, we're looking at 3,100 kilos instead of 26. And we have 4,000 something. So we definitely have enough fuel to get to Albany. So I think that's what we're going to do. If we have to miss in Montreal for any reason, we're going to turn around and come right back here to Albany, which is going to be somewhere right behind us here. Okay, we are level at 290, so I can now... going to put this into managed mode at 290. There it is, altitude cruise, and then I'm going to put in the 1000 that we're cleared to. You see our top of descent point coming up there. Any questions? Alright, so the FS2 crew agrees that that is all good, and we're pretty much ready to start our descent. That didn't take too long at all, I gotta say. I thought it would take a little longer for us to get to this point, but I spent almost 20 minutes setting up and briefing this approach properly that I think we're just about ready for it. So I think we're good. Have a few minutes to kill here while we're sort of talking over the Boston Center here. But one thing that I just read just while I was on my little break there, something interesting, and we're going to probably talk about it repeatedly in the future, but FS Expo 2021 has been announced. At least the initial sort of launch announcement has been made for FltSim Expo 2021. Which is, for those of you that don't know, is the North American Flight Simulator Expo. It's pretty much the only major one that happens in North America. So, unfortunately for 2020, like so much else, it was cancelled. So for 2021, they're doing a little bit of a hybrid model. Okay, so we're coming very close to our top of drop, so I'm going to just engage a managed descent here and start the descent. And so what they've decided to do, and I think this is very smart on their part, is they've decided to switch to what they're calling a hybrid event. There will be an in-person event. It will be in San Diego. There will be, of course, the usual exhibitors and seminars as well to go with it. And
Delta 45, call me back
and the
on
usual chance to mingle with people who share this hobby with you. But there will apparently be a fairly strong online component. So for those people who are unable or choose not to travel for safety reasons, probably being the most likely ones, one can probably assume that the pandemic will still be in full force by next year anyway, so who knows when we will really be able to travel safely in great numbers again. So for those that are unwilling or unable to travel to San Diego, there will be apparently a fairly strong online section as well. So I hope that means like most of the seminars will be broadcast online, that you can choose to participate remotely that way. I think that would be great. I have a minor issue with San Diego. It's a beautiful city. I have a very minor issue with San Diego as a destination for this conference, though. And the issue I have, and is that it has a transportation problem. San Diego does not support international arrivals. So anyone who wants to fly to San Diego will have to fly to somewhere else in America and change flights somewhere else in America to get to San Diego. There's no direct international flights there from anywhere, which is a bit unfortunate. The previous venues for the FltSim Expo, Orlando and Vegas, both have very strong international connections directly at the airport, something that does not exist, unfortunately, in San Diego. Alright, we've reached our descent profile. I'm going to watch this speed carefully because we're pretty darn close to the red line here. Looks like she's going to be okay. So that may impact some people's ability to arrive. I would have to fly in from Canada, which means I would definitely have to. I'm going to need a little bit of speed brakes here to control that. I would definitely need to fly somewhere else in America and change planes. The other option is when I went on a family vacation to San Diego years ago, we flew to Los Angeles and drove down to San Diego, and it is a beautiful drive. Once you get out of LA, LA is a bit... LA is a city. If you've seen one city, you've seen them all, and especially from the highways, it's not a particularly beautiful city. But once you get south of LA, out into the California countryside, I guess, if you will, it's a pretty beautiful drive down the coast from LA to San Diego. So, you know, obviously you're going to spend a little bit more money renting a car, but renting a car will probably be less than a second flight, probably connecting to San Diego than necessarily a direct flight to Los Angeles. I don't know. You're going to have to work it out for yourselves, but if you are thinking about going, I will say this, that it is a beautiful drive. If you'd rather fly into LA and drive down, it's a beautiful drive from LA down to San Diego. I think it was about 2.5 hours, something like that. It's not an unreasonable drive to do in an afternoon. Beautiful scenery along the way, though. Alright, speed brakes are closed again. Looks like this might be a bit bumpy in the descent, so I'm going to go ahead and get the seatbelts on now. So I do take a small issue with that choice of venue, just because of the lack of international transportation connections. But otherwise, you know, I'm still eager to see what happens, and especially if there is a virtual event.
335, leaving my airspace to the north. Montreal is closed. Radio service terminated. Frequency change approved. Have a good one.
All right, off to Unicom for Transat 335. Thanks for the service. Have a great day. Alright, and that was our VATSIM ATC for the day. Oh well. Yeah, so as I was saying, I think first of all, I think San Diego's a beautiful city. I think it's a nice place to have an event. It's just unfortunate that their airport does not support international arrivals. That's going to make it a little bit awkward for some people to attend from other locales, from international points. But if they're having a hybrid event, I think it's a really smart idea, and I think it's a really great way to hedge their bets. Though the other thing that they said hand in hand with that is that there will no penalty refunds up to the day of the event. So if at any point in time, if you register for the event and then at any point in the future you choose not to go, there will be no penalty, at least not from the event's standpoint. I don't know, your transportation, you know, tickets may okay, transition, set 2995. Your transportation and accommodations may not be so willing to offer a refund, but certainly the event is not going to, the FltSim Expo themselves will not hold you to the event. They will let you freely change or cancel your event attendance at any point up into the start of the event, which is great. I think that's a really good way to handle it, and I think that goes hand in hand with this hybrid event. I think it's a really smart move on their part because we don't know what's going to happen next year. The dates for the event specifically, let me just find them here. I read it quickly and I've already sort of forgotten. It was, let's see here. Sounds like the first weekend in June 4th to 6th. So that's 8 months from now. That is a long time, but it's not. At the same time, like, obviously, COVID-19 is not going anywhere anytime soon. There's lots of vaccines in the works, but nothing has been firmly established yet. So I certainly wouldn't hold out hopes that you're going to have a vaccine, certainly not in widespread usage by that point. It's possible. It's definitely possible, and you can certainly work from the assumption that it is definitely feasible and possible, but I don't think the odds of it are great. I would put the odds 20 to 30% maybe that there will be a widespread vaccine commonly available by that point. And part of the problem with the vaccine is manufacturing enough doses to vaccinate a large enough portion of the population to really make anything, traveling or any kind of interactions, practical again. So, but again, kudos to the organizers for then also coming up with this hybrid model where it will also be an online event, and if international travel is still not possible at that point, and even domestic travel is discouraged and difficult for a lot of people to do, the event, instead of being cancelled outright, will be able to probably be shifted into an online format for the most part. And if it ends up being completely cancelled as an in-person event, hopefully the virtual event will still continue with at least seminars and perhaps presentations from a lot of our favorite developers and other people. So yeah, I'm a little bit excited. I'm curious to see what happens. I'm cautiously excited about it. It's good to see that they have not given up on the concept and they're moving forward with this, and we will see where it takes us. It may or may not be a going concern by next year, but at least certainly they're trying. So kudos to the team for trying, and kudos to them for really kind of playing both sides of the field and hoping for an in-person event. And if that's not going to work out, there is already the backup plans being developed for a virtual event, which everybody can slide over to instead of just canceling outright. There will be already the process in place to have that virtual event. So kudos to those guys for that. I think that's great. I've wanted to go the last couple of years, and the last 2 years I almost registered twice. And at the end of the day, for me, time off work is probably my biggest challenge. The hardest thing for me to do is to get that time off work that I would need to go to these events. All right, there we go. Alt star. That is probably the biggest thing that stood in the way, and at the end of the day, travel is not cheap, unfortunately, and I would like to get there, but it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to do. Where's the 210 restriction here? I can't remember. Was it at EBDOT? It wasn't at EBDOT, was it? This one here. No, it's not at EBDOT. It's after that. So let's go ahead. We don't need to slow down that much yet. We can keep the speed up until we get a little closer in, and what we'll do is at EBDOT we'll commence our next leg of our descent. But in the meantime, we can keep the speed up a little bit longer. Get to the gate a little bit sooner. So the one thing I said I was going to do, actually, and I forgot at this point, was to look up I'm just curious if this flight has been reinstated yet or not. Oh, that's not quite correct. 335. There it is. Transat 335, last drive over a year ago, so no, it's quite outdated. So I'm just going to do one more search and see if there is any... see if there's any flights from Punta Cana to Montreal at this point. I'm a little bit unsure. Transat does actually apparently have a flight, a weekly flight now. Still no gate listed, so we're just going to pick a gate at random, unfortunately. Let's get a little closer in here. But Transat has come back. It's good to see the Transat has come back. They're one of the airlines that has come back. The one that is a little bit surprising me and a little bit disappointing me that they haven't come back is Porter. Porter Airlines has not yet resumed service. They've said, I think, mid-November now is their next target date to try and resume service. Their biggest problem is that two out of their three probably biggest markets are closed. Alright, so there's EBDOT. Don't freeze on me. Sweet Jesus. Okay. Wow, it's getting a little rocky in here. Alright, so first let's get the speed back. And then we can go down to, let's go down to 8,000 initially here. And we'll just do an open descent, so we'll let the speed bleed off and then we'll start down. Yeah, so it's it's unfortunate Porter is one of the ones that has not yet returned to the skies. There is a fair bit of domestic flying going on. It's definitely not where it was before, but there's a fair bit of domestic flying. And Porter used to make quite a bit of money off of the off the Toronto-Ottawa and the Toronto-Montreal routes. Those were their original routes, and they were definitely hardcore money makers. However, apparently, as they grew and expanded, the other two regions that really started to make them a lot of money was, of course, transborder flying. They went to a variety of northeastern U.S. cities, Boston, New York, Washington, and also all the way out to Chicago. And those ones made them a fair bit of money over the years. The other one that really made them a fair bit of money and has been a bit of a problem is the East Coast runs. So going out from Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal down to Halifax and Halifax, Moncton, Fredericton, St. John's, all those ones out east. So for those of you that are unaware, in Canada, those eastern provinces have mostly created their own mini bubble. They're not allowing people who are not residents of those eastern provinces to travel into those provinces. And it has worked to a degree. Checked. It has worked to a degree in that there have been very, very few cases in those provinces, and what few they have, they've been able to very quickly contact, trace, and control because of the fact that they have such strict travel controls that people entering the provinces are being monitored, and even those people, those provinces, eastern provinces, are treating the rest of the country, let alone the rest of the world, as a foreign country, where you are not allowed to. You're not allowed to travel from those places without a 14-day quarantine the second you land. So that's also helping to control it. People are not coming from other provinces and spreading it into those eastern provinces because they're quarantined on landing. And a few people have brought it in, and it's been rapidly controlled because those people haven't quarantined properly. Unfortunately, that is a big segment of Porter's market as well, is flights out to the East Coast and back. So with that segment and the transborder traffic closed, Porter just does not see enough viable passenger traffic to keep their business afloat. It's unfortunate because they're a great little airline. There's 8,000. As soon as we make this turn here, we'll start going down again. And it's sort of... It surprised me a little bit that they shut down so quickly and didn't come back quickly. But understanding now, as I've been informed, that is their strategy, that they're waiting for at least either the East Coast or the transborder flights to open until one of those two markets opens up. They just don't see it because the thing is, like, they do have other markets, but so much of their traffic and their revenue has become also transit traffic through Toronto. So people connecting from those transborder markets out to the East Coast and vice versa, that without one or both those markets reopening, there's not enough traffic left in the rest of the system that they feel that they can operate successfully. Which is probably, or we're supposed to be max 220 knots. That's what I missed. So we're supposed to be max 220 knots. We're a little bit high and fast here. We might have to start bringing out the speed brakes a little bit here. Anyways, the one thing I want to say was, because we're below 10,000, approach checklist.
Okay, approach checklist. Briefing.
Confirmed.
ECAM status.
Checked.
Seat belts.
On.
Faro ref.
2995 set.
2995 set. MDADH.
Barrow 31. Sorry, let me try that again. Minimums 318 feet set. 318 feet set.
318 feet set. Engine mode selector.
Norm.
All right, approach checklist is complete.
All right, almost there. Just got to get a little lower on this downwind here. And it looks like we're going below green dot already, so.
Flight deck. Okay, thanks for letting me know.
Flaps
Captain,
1.
The captain is secure. Speed checked. Flaps 1.
Thank you. A little rainy out there. What's our true air temperature right now? We're looking at 10 degrees. Not too bad. Total air temperature, not true air temperature. Total air temperature, my bad. Alright, so we're getting down there.
1,000 to go.
Checked. And then at Curdu, we're going to make a left turn and head off onto the intercept the approach. Here we go, breaking out. We got a little bit of Montreal in sight here. Got the tunnel there, and oh, what have I got? Because I got the speed brakes out and we're leveling off. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, speed brakes stowed. Okay. So let's get a nice square base turn here. 330 heading. Let's get 3,000. Open descent. And as we make the turn, let's get the speed back to about 190 here. Actually, we can't at flap 1 anyways. We're kind of stuck here at 210, so let's leave it for just a little bit longer. Don't want to get the flap 2 out too early. Wow. The rain here, I think, is really playing havoc with my frame rate. Apparently the other thing that's also using a lot of processor power is Firefox. So we're going to close down a few of the tabs here. See if we can't reduce that a little bit there. Didn't mean to do that. There we go, get rid of a few tabs. That cut back on the system usage a little bit. There we go. Got a few frames back. Flaps 2. Flaps 2.
Speed checked. Flaps 2.
Heading 270.
Checked.
We're going to put medium braking just because it's a wet runway. Speed 180.
Checked.
Oh, I didn't arm the approach yet, did I? There it is. Lokestar.
Checked.
Glide slope is armed.
Checked.
We're almost there. Glide slope's alive.
Checked.
Loke. K57.
Checked.
Alright, let's just get our perf page up here. So our...
Are you sure about that?
Oh, quiet you. Our Approach speed is going to be 155 today. Glide slope, go around altitude is set. It's a little bit rainy, a little bit overcast, but it's not terrible. But I'm glad we changed our alternate in case we do have to do that go around, because 600 or 700 feet is a terrible ceiling for an alternate, really it is. Alright, just here in the distance, airport's just coming into view now. Gear down.
Gear down.
Flaps 3.
Speed checked. Flaps 3.
Speed 155.
Cabin crew seats for landing. Checked.
Montreal Trudeau traffic, Transat 335 is 5 miles final, runway 24 left. Landing checklist.
Okay, landing checklist. Cabin crew.
Advised.
Auto thrust.
Speed.
ECAM memo.
Landing, no blue.
Landing checklist complete.
That looks like there might be an airplane on the ground over there, just taxiing around, just about half, right in the middle of the airport there. Could be something else.
1,000.
Checked. Alright, doing pretty good, pretty stable here, a little bit rainy, but otherwise we're doing good. Now we're going to get the autopilot off.
Checked.
Checked. I barely even had to touch the controls yet. It's so
400.
Stable and smooth here.
Checked.
300. 100 above.
Checked.
200. Minimum.
Landing.
Check.
100. 50, 40, 30. Retard. Retard.
Spoilers. Reverse green. Decel. .70 knots.
Take the brakes off as well. Maybe it wasn't an airplane, maybe it was just the pappies on the runway 28 there. Alright, that was a pretty nice landing if I do say so myself, but one thing that the Sims will never capture is the fact that it's so much easier to make a smooth landing on a wet runway. Just the lower coefficient of friction as the rubber hits the ground always tends to make things go a little bit smoother, makes the touchdowns always feel a little bit smoother because there's no sideways, or there's very little sideways friction as you touch down. So even if you are moving slightly sideways, you'd never feel it, you never notice it. So as the friction slowly builds up on the wet runway instead of more abruptly on when rubber hits dry pavement. Okay to clean up. So there we go. So we're just going to taxi straight ahead on Alpha 4 here. He's got the lights correctly set. Yeah, I'm just going to make sure that strobe is all the way off there. And we're just going to continue Alpha 4 and the north ramp around to gate 57. Rainy afternoon in Montreal, but we made it back again. Another leg of a pilot's life is done. Just got to get to the gate and unload all these happy people, because I'm sure they're happy to be done their vacations and returning to Montreal. Reality strikes again. And you have to think that in this world now where air travel has been so severely curtailed now for the better part of a year, that when it does become viable again, and I'm not in a rush to necessarily say it's got to be viable at any particular date or time, but when it does become viable again, I think everyone and their mother is going to need a vacation. Unfortunately, a lot of people have lost their jobs, and that's going to of course put a dent in the economy and the traveling, the ability for people to travel as a whole. But for those that have not lost their jobs, that have kept their jobs and have kept on working, and especially those who have been, frontline jobs and have dealt with potential COVID exposures repeatedly in a lot of cases, they are going to just need a vacation. If ever there was a group that needed a vacation, it's all these frontline workers especially. But society as a whole needs a bit of a vacation. This year was a bit of a I want to try and say something that is not going to require bad words, because it has been just an absolute gong show anyways, and it has worn on everybody's patience, no doubt. Okay, so shoot, I don't know where my gate 57 is. There it is. 535557's just on the corner here. Okay, so it's going to be there somewhere. Okay, so we got to swing around here. All right, so let's get that APU started. But yeah, I think a lot of people are going to want to travel and just take very restful vacations, whoa, what's going on here? Very restful vacations, very, like the all expenses, or the all-inclusive, like, Caribbean resort vacations for North Americans, I think are going to be very popular again, just because they just want, like, total vacations of the mind where they don't have to stress about anything, because, man, if this has not been one of the most stressful years of the last 30 for almost everybody. Okay, there is our marshaller, so taxi light off, please. The FO's not going to do it himself, so I'm going to do it, and in the meantime, my steering is going to go crazy while I try to do that. Because I can only do one thing at a time, and it would be nice if the FO could do some of these things for me, but he won't, because he's a jerk. Oh, it's just raining cats and dogs out of here, isn't it? Alright, let's just make sure APU available, beauty. Stop doing that. Left click on the switch! Right click on the switch, I mean. Sometimes I hate this. I guess first we gotta operate the jetway. Gonna wait a second for that. Shutdown procedures. So he's doing a bunch of stuff right now. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Chops right now, and you can release the parking brake.
Thank you. Parking checklist.
Okay, here's the parking checklist. APU bleed.
On.
Engines.
Off.
Seat belts.
Off.
Exterior lights.
Set.
Fuel pumps.
Actually, the beacon should be off too, you jackass. Fuel pumps off. Off.
Parking brake and chocks.
Set.
Parking checklist is complete.
I find it always hangs up here, and then it loses connection to SOD altogether. Additional services. Coming soon, lavatory service, water service request GPU. What? Well, that's new. Okay, we'll do it this way. Alright, so here it comes. Perfect. Just give it a couple seconds and we'll start the offloading process here. Apparently we were having some bridge troubles here at Montreal today. Request GPU, that's going to be a nice service to have for GSX to have built in for certain airplanes. That's going to be great. Water and lab service. and this is the one thing about so many of these developers is they love their products. So many developers in the flight sim world, they absolutely love their products. They love the community, and they continually update them at no cost to the end users. Request deboarding. Waiting for other things to... Not for crying out loud. Yeah, it's not going to do anything until... So I have to reset GSX in order to get the deboarding to start. Alright, but as I was saying, like one of the wonderful things about the flight sim community is the commitment the developers have to the community as a whole. And they really, truly do commit to the community, and they love the products that they've created. They love the community, I think, that they serve. And they are continually updating their products, whether it be new features, love how that just goes through there, but whether it be new features, whether it just be simply tweaking the features that they already have, or maybe fixing bugs and glitches in the software they already have. But you know, I bought GSX from FS Dream Team three years ago at least. 4 years ago. I've seen countless updates, countless improvements, much better animations and objects than existed before, and just adding more and more things over time. Now they're adding these additional service vehicles, lavatory trucks, water trucks, the ability to connect and disconnect the GPU through the GSX interface, tons and tons of things being added all the time, and FS Dream Team is just one example. So many of these developers, you know, things change at an airport, or they find things that they're always updating their airports, and oftentimes most of these updates will be free of charge. They won't charge a thing for these updates. Those that do usually will definitely create an upgrade path for existing users, so that existing users are not left high and dry when their software is updated. So, but it amazes me, and I'm happy to support these developers. I've never bought GSX Level 2. I may buy it, not so much because I want it, but because I want to support FS Dream Team, and because I think that what they do is great. The stuff that they've created is just absolutely great. The amount of detail that goes into the ground servicing of the aircraft now, and the tight integration with an aircraft like the Airbus here is just wonderful too. And that's, I think, a bit of a collaboration between both parties in terms of creating SDKs that are workable and compatible with outside third-party software. Because at the end of the day, very few simmers will have only one third-party software running. They'll often have third-party software running on top of third-party software, and multiple different levels running. So it's good to see that these developers don't work in a vacuum. They don't just create items, products just based on the default sim, but that they also create products that serve the community as a whole, that work with other third-party products. So they realize that most people will have these other products. Don't depend on them, but great to build in that compatibility when you can. So Aerosoft and FS Dream Team, thank you very much for working together to make the ground operations of the Airbus so smooth and immersive. And it all works so well together. So thank you guys. And thank you to all of you out there for watching me and listening to me rant through my channel. I always appreciate you guys listening in. Looks like we got one more leg done. We almost have enough for a promotion here. We only need about 5 more points. I think that next flight, because it's a long flight especially, will get us over the top and will get us the experience points we need to get our promotion to senior first officer here at Air Transat, and we'll see how much money we make per hour then. But in the meantime, again, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you have as always, learned something useful from these videos. And if you ever have more suggestions for things you'd like to see, things you'd like to see me do or talk about, please drop a comment below. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to 1,000 users. We're going to have a contest at the 1,000 users. We're gonna give away some prizes. So make sure you're a subscriber below, and make sure you have notifications on so you find out in time what's going to happen. Thank you guys again for watching. Stay healthy out there. Be safe, and we'll see you guys all real soon.